Wisconsin Live Desk on Tuesday, June 3rd. It is 12:30 p.m. and the Maxwell Anderson trial is in the midst of its lunch recess. They will be resuming testimony at 1:45 this afternoon. For the next hour and 15 minutes, we're going to be bringing you a summary and analysis of this morning's testimony. You will hear once again from Fox 6's Aaron Mabin, who has been at the Milwaukee courthouse, the Milwaukee County Safety Building, actually, in Judge Crivello's courtroom, listening to testimony, particularly that of Detective Kayla Bierke, as we're going through some of the photographs taken inside Maxwell Anderson's home and some key items that the prosecution has drawn our attention to. We will also hear at 1:15 this afternoon from Julius Kim of the law firm Kim and Lavoie, a criminal defense expert and former state prosecutor who will be able to give us his analysis of what we've heard and what it might mean for each side. We can also talk a little bit about how we got here. So it is Tuesday of the second week of this trial. And of course, it started last Tuesday because it started after the Memorial Day holiday. Tuesday of last week, day one of the trial, was all jury selection. This is now the fifth day of testimony. We have heard from 56 total state witnesses, several of whom have been recalled for a second or even a third time. So in terms of individuals, I think it's up in the upper 40s in terms of the number of different people we've heard from. So far today, 7 individual witnesses, most of them detectives from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. We did hear from 2 civilians. One was the owner of Dukes on Water. The other is a security worker for Dukes on Water. As you recall, if you know the basic details of this case, Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson, it's not entirely clear exactly when they met, but they seem to know of each other. But then after being introduced through mutual acquaintances or friends, they went out on a first date on April 1st of 2024. That date started at around 5 o'clock in the evening at Twisted Fisherman, a place that Maxwell Anderson had worked for just a few weeks in 2024. He said he wanted to go there to pick up his W-2, so his tax statement. So here they are in April of 2024. I guess it was earlier that year, so, or it might have even been 2023. I might be getting that wrong. He had worked there for a few weeks at some point during that past year, wanted to go pick up his W-2. So we saw yesterday images of them sitting at the bar, doing shots, having drinks. That one right there, you see Sade Robinson seated on the right, Maxwell Anderson seated on the left, and there's a bartender. Those are the only people in the bar at that time. They're there for about an hour and a half, and then they leave to head to Dukes on Water, which is another bar in Milwaukee on Water Street at Juneau. They're leaving from this area. The bar they're at here that you see them at, Twisted Fisherman, is near Potawatomi Casino, which is in the Menominee River Valley along Canal Street in Milwaukee. They get into Sade Robinson's car. You see the 2 of them on surveillance video leave the building together. They get into Sade Robinson's car. In this image, they drive away, and then they head to Dukes on Water. We see images of them parking outside Dukes on Water and walking in together, and they arrive together at 6:36 p.m. on April 1st. The state has really gone out of its way to do a thorough detailing of their movements on surveillance video and through the Life 360 app and through security camera video in each of the bars, really demonstrating that at least from 5 o'clock until 9:03 p.m., these 2 are together on a date. It doesn't seem like it's anything remarkable. There's no arguing. There's no aggressive touching or anything like that. They just seem to be out having some drinks, having a good time. They play a little beer pong. They play some bar dice, particularly Maxwell Anderson does. This bar there at Dukes on Water, it's established that he's a regular there. He bellies up to the bar. The bartender serves him a couple of drinks, and pretty soon they're playing bar dice. It's probably the only time I've ever heard in a homicide trial an attorney asking a witness to explain what bar dice is or if he knows how the game works. It's about as Wisconsin as it gets, but sure enough, that happened today. And the reason that it was mentioned is to establish that it's usually regulars, people who are well known at a bar in Wisconsin, who will be offered the cup with the dice to play bar dice. And why? Well, the loser of the game has to buy drinks or shots for everybody else. So that was discussed in testimony today, not something I expected we were going to hear, but I think the significance is to establish that he's known there. He was a regular, he'd been around, people were comfortable with him. After they're there for a while, they go and they play. You see that table there on the right. That's the table for playing beer pong at Duke's. So they all go to play beer pong. You can see Sade Robinson at this point is on the far side of the table with another young woman who she has some conversations with, actually gives her a hug before they leave. So there appears to be some familiarity there, or maybe it's someone she just met and had a nice time with that night. Maxwell Anderson is on the near side in that dark shirt, which we know on the front is the Carhartt shirt, which, by the way, that's significant because that shirt is later found in his laundry, having been cleaned a few days later. I believe there's a shot of him as he is outside Twisted Fisherman in that shirt where you can see there. Yeah, so you see the Carhartt wording on the front of that shirt. Later on, a detective today holds up that shirt in court. There it is. That's the same shirt Maxwell Anderson, they say, was wearing on their first date. They found the shirt. They did not find, from what I understand, the pants he was wearing that he's seen in the video when he is leaving the scene of the car fire and then getting on the bus. There were also some shoes that were particularly of interest, and that's because as detectives were detailing his walk from the car fire to the bus and then home, you could see that he was wearing shoes with light-colored bottoms, and detectives said they searched that house thoroughly. They looked in every nook and cranny, every crevice, every floor. They did not find those shoes. So if the shirt was there, what happened to the shoes? What happened to the pants? Where did they go? That is likely something the state is going to be pointing out, I would imagine, in its closing argument. That's the whole thing about these cases, is you hear the questions that are being asked. You hear the testimony. We don't always know why the state might be asking this or why the defense is going this route with its cross-examination. They have their reasons, and they're going to present all of this in a final story to the jury. Sometimes we're speculating. We're trying to guess where they're going. That's why we have experts like Julius Kim on to talk to us a little bit about what they think is going on here and why they think it's significant, especially someone like Attorney Kim, who's been involved in homicide trials. So he knows what's important. He knows things that are critical to proving a case or critical to influencing a jury, what might be good for each side or the other. So we're going to hear from him a little bit later on. Those were probably some of the key things we heard before we got to Detective Bierke. We did hear from Hobie Love, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective who had responded to South Milwaukee, as I said, where there were some gloves found along the lakefront. This was about a quarter mile south of the spot where Sade Robinson's leg was found, and they found some gloves that appeared to have some blood on them. It was not indicated during that questioning whether or not that blood ever tested and came back to Sade Robinson or came back to Maxwell Anderson, or if it was significant in some other way. But the fact that they are having someone testify to that suggests that there's going to be some sort of connection we're going to hear about later on. There's some other things we are waiting to hear that I think are going to be key. And one of those things comes down to Detective Bierke's testimony. She went through the house methodically. Detectives took photos of everything. And that was the basement, that was the bedroom, the kitchen, the upstairs. And one of the things that she spent a considerable amount of time talking about is this living room. And you see the red couch that's down to the right there with some pillows on it. And there's sort of it's dark, but there's an ottoman, a brown ottoman in front of that. Up on the wall on the right, you see a small shelf. There's a knife up on that shelf that also becomes particularly of interest. And see if we can get another look at that same room. This is the couch, and you see that shelf up to the left. This couch, this red couch, worn, has a shiny appearance, kind of looks like it's definitely very worn down on the sitting or laying surface. It's like a pleather or leather type of material, and then you have the brown ottoman that is oriented in the way that it is up against the couch. There were questions about exactly how that was laid out, how it was oriented. I suspect, and I'm going to tell you again, I'm speculating here because I just don't know, but I'm putting two and two together. During opening statements, the prosecution, lead prosecutor Ian Vance Curzan, mentioned that we will see a photograph from Maxwell Anderson's phone that was extracted from the phone he still had on him the day he was arrested. And that shows a photograph of what they say is Sade Robinson face down on a couch. and that in that photograph you see a hand that they say is Maxwell Anderson's hand reaching under and grabbing her right breast. We haven't seen that photo introduced yet. Obviously, we suspect that will be introduced at some point soon. And the fact that they spent more than probably 7 or 8 minutes talking about this couch suggests to me that we're going to see in that photograph a couch that looks an awful lot like this. And the state is going to make the argument that it is this couch and that that places Sade Robinson in Maxwell Anderson's living room. We haven't seen that yet. I'm telling you where I think this is going. It's an educated guess based on what was said in opening statements, but we'll see where that goes from here. We also saw this knife. This, you notice the sort of very distinctive art of the sheath and also on the handle. It's like a bird beak on the handle. This was on that shelf that was sitting above the couch. I go to the back that one. You see that shelf to the right, right under where the sort of angled ceiling is. Apparently this was sitting up on that shelf near the couch and was one of more than 50 knives found throughout Anderson's home. They found knives in his bedroom. They found knives in the kitchen, which you would expect. They found knives in the living room. They even had, along one of the chairs or couches, he had sewn in some old pants with pockets and was using those pockets to store a variety of different tools, including at least one knife. The prosecution seems to be suggesting that, or at least raising the attention of the jury, that Maxwell Anderson had a lot of knives. And perhaps having all of those knives means he might be the kind of guy who would have had a knife handy to do the kinds of things that are alleged in this case. We know that the medical examiner last week said, or I should say earlier this week, said that the body parts and how they were removed from Sade Robinson's body did not appear that they were necessarily power tools used. She didn't see clear-cut evidence of that. She couldn't say how they were removed, but she saw signs that was consistent with the use of a knife. So if that is the case, then maybe that's why they're telling us all about the knives found in the home. So much more we could talk about. I'm going to take a break, and in a little bit we're going to be joined once again by Fox 6's Aaron Maben outside the Milwaukee County Safety Building. He'll tell us some of what he heard in testimony this morning and also what the scene is like there downtown outside the trial. We'll talk to him when we come back after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And I am Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson at the Wisconsin Live Desk on day 6 of the Maxwell Anderson trial, the 5th day of testimony, the second Tuesday of this trial. We're in week 2. We were told this trial would go probably a minimum of 2 weeks. And at this point, the state is still presenting its case in chief, which means we haven't even gotten to the defense's case, much less to jury instructions or the jury deliberating. So this is going to take a while longer, and we don't know how much more the state has to go. We know that there have now been 56 witnesses called in those 5 days of testimony. Several of those witnesses have been recalled 2 or 3 times. And I heard someone, or I saw, I think in the YouTube stream earlier, that there were some commenters asking, why do they keep recalling all of these same witnesses? Well, sometimes it's a matter of the order of events that they want to present evidence. You might have a detective who can talk about what was found in Sade Robinson's apartment at one point, but that same one might need to be asked later about something else that fits sort of the storytelling. So instead of having it's already disjointed, but to have it even more disjointed by having one detective talk about 2 or 3 different things and another one talk about 2 or 3 different things, sometimes they'll recall a witness and bring them back to hit a key point. Other times, it's because there's been testimony or cross-examination. In particular, since this is the state's case, there's been cross-examination that's raised a question that they go, well, we want to address that with our earlier expert or our earlier witness. Now that they've asked or raised this point or raised this theory, and I'll give an example. At one point, the defense, after going through Sade Robinson's apartment, they pointed out they were able to get the judge to agree to let them enter into testimony that there had been pills found in Sade Robinson's safe, pills that were field tested as meth. They were never tested by the crime lab. The defense wanted that in, and their argument to the judge was, hey, if she's got drugs, maybe she's buying drugs from someone, maybe she's mixed up with some dangerous people other than Maxwell Anderson. That's a theory that could be out there, and that goes to maybe a defense that they would have for Maxwell Anderson. Well, the state turned around and said, okay, well, we're calling back a detective who looked at her phone. And they brought that detective who had already been on the stand earlier. They brought him back and they said, okay, well, is there any evidence on her phone that she was talking to drug dealers, that she was asking about drugs, that she was doing anything related? No, they didn't see any of that. So that was the reason they called that particular witness back, was to refute or at least try to tear down that defense theory that she was mixed up with a bunch of dangerous people. So that's it on that for now. I think we've got Aaron Mabin, who is back with us again. Aaron is live outside the Milwaukee County Safety Building. And Aaron, let me make sure I get your audio correct this time. We'll get you up there and going. You've been out there several days. You've been out there at different times. What are you seeing as far as the scene around you? Are there any supporters out there today, or has it been pretty quiet?
Yeah. So today's actually been really quiet, but I want to show you this image right outside the safety building doors right now. As we push in together, Sade Robinson's father is out here right now, meeting with maybe some family members, also some maybe friends of the family out here right now. I'm showing you this moment right now because I got here around 10 o'clock this morning all the way until noon. Now the garbage truck is maybe blocking our view of him. Around noon, he was not in the courtroom at all. And in my reporting throughout this entire process, I've noticed that this has been extremely difficult for his mother, for Sade Robinson's mother, and also her father, both of them needing to get up and get down and get up and get down and stay there for their daughter during those very difficult moments, but also to excuse themselves as well. So now we see Sade Robinson's father leaving the safety building. He's here with a woman who, I'm not sure their relationship right now, but he was not married to Sade Robinson's mother. She lived here in Milwaukee. He lived in Florida. Our reporter, Bria Jones, first one to talk to him via Zoom, and they've, been able to talk. And I asked her, does he live here now? And she thinks he still lives in Florida too. When I walked outside of the courtroom, I saw the courthouse here just a few minutes ago before he came to me, Brian. I introduced myself. I said, I'm Aaron with Fox 6. We said hello, shook his hand, and then I came here to report to you. You can tell he is in a very somber mood, as one could imagine, being a father who loses his daughter and has to see her dismembered body parts. So I just want to paint a picture that, yes, we are seeing supporters, Brian, but we're also seeing family members. It's extremely cold in the courtroom, so maybe getting some heat, getting some fresh air can be a bit rejuvenating for not only family members, but also just anyone in the gallery.
I know when Fox 6's Bria Jones talked to Sade Robinson's father, she actually got the father and mother together for the first time to do a joint interview. The first reporter in the area to do that, first reporter maybe anywhere that did that in this case. But she talked about how he was, he's living in Florida and he's getting these updates. And every time he would see a 414 number show up, every time Bria would call, his heart would sink because he was afraid, like, what now? What are you going to tell me now? They found her arm, they found her torso. He's probably still waiting for that call that we found her head. He hasn't gotten it yet. But I sense that this has been a difficult process because of the way this just piece by, I don't mean to be flippant by saying piece by piece this came out, but or insensitive, but now he's had to essentially pause his life to come here and wait for this trial to play out over the course of a couple of weeks.
And it's certainly been a journey from very much the very beginning. He was in Florida as much of this development was happening, and days after he traveled to Milwaukee. I don't know how long he had been away from Milwaukee, but he had traveled to Milwaukee, and he's in this city that he hasn't been in for some time, and it's a city that, you know, his daughter grew up in. It molded her, but also it was the city where she took her last breath, and so much pain is also in the city, and there's so much pain in the courtroom, and we're literally seeing this happening during so much of the testimony. We've seen a victim witness advocate giving him Kleenex boxes. So not just Kleenexes, Brian, not just little sheets, but the entire box he's needed when he's been in the courtroom during those really gruesome days from opening statements all the way through the medical examiner's office. So again, I'm not sure if he was here before 10 o'clock this morning, but I have not seen him in the courtroom for much of the morning today. I will note that Sade Robinson's mom was there, but she did step away during Detective Bierke's testimony too. She had to walk out of the courtroom today. So a lot of movement. It has been a little bit, and we are seeing mother. Eddie, are we able to see? I do want to show Sade Robinson's mom behind you right here. This is mom walking, going for a walk. She's the one in the white, along with another family member, and that confirms that's who they were talking to. So mom and dad and other family members, when we came to you a few minutes ago, they were all talking together. So it just shows that mom and dad, even though they're not living together, they're not in the same state, they are united for their daughter. So they walked out of the safety building. They're on this lunch break. They're talking. They're going for walks and just maybe just kind of decompressing or just settling what all this testimony that they took in this morning, Brian.
Just another example of why Aaron Maben is such a great live reporter. You're spotting moments as you're talking to the camera and going, let's see, that's the mom over there, that's the dad over there. It's great television, and that's why we hope you're here for our live stream. Aaron, I want to talk a little bit about what happened on the stand this morning. You were in there particularly for Detective Kayla Bierke, and a lot of photographs. We saw an awful lot of photographs of the inside of Maxwell Anderson's home, something for more than a year. We all wondered, what does it look like inside there? What are we going to see? What did we see today?
You know, it was kind of a building off point from yesterday when we finally saw the outside and inside of Maxwell Anderson's home. But when Detective Kayla Bierke with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office took the stand, she painted a picture and made it clear that these are going to be from April 4th, April 5th, and April 16th when search warrants were executed inside Maxwell Anderson's home. And we got to see a wide-ranging scope of the backyard, where there are holes in the backyard used for a fire pit, a shed that was being built. We also saw the inside of the garage that was in the backyard for the first time. And then we make our way inside of Maxwell Anderson's home. When we get inside of Maxwell Anderson's home, we see literally the front door. You can either go up or you can go down. And we went downstairs to the basement, Brian. That's the first place we went when Kayla Bierke was taking the stand. And in the basement, it seemed to be a normal basement. Yes, there were power tools, there were a workstation down there too. And then we saw this makeshift bedroom is what she called. And that kind of had a lot of people looking up and leaning in. What was this bedroom used for? The detective said that when they found it, they took evidence from sheets that were on there. There was also clothing on the bed too. And then from that makeshift bedroom, nothing of Sade Robinson was there. No sign of Sade Robinson at all in that makeshift bedroom. We finally get the laundry. So we go to the laundry. There are 2 units there. And the detective says this is when we found the shirt that was worn during that first date that Sade Robinson and Maxwell Anderson went on. And we saw the black Carhartt shirt that Maxwell Anderson was wearing at Twisted Fisherman, at Duke's, and it was washed. It was freshly in the laundry pile, as she said. And then they discussed that in front of the jury, finding this freshly washed clothing, which obviously doesn't truly stand out, because after you wear something for a number of days, number of times, you may want to throw it in the wash, throw it in the dryer. But what was interesting in that testimony was, yes, we saw this clothing from the first date, but we do not find the clothing from the person who the prosecution says is Maxwell Anderson on the Milwaukee County bus, taking the bus. This is going to be a hoodie. It's also going to be black pants, shoes, and a backpack. We never find that clothing, but we do find the clothing that is from the first date. From the basement, we make it up to the kitchen area. In the kitchen area, there are more than 50 knives, more than 51 knives just in the kitchen area and in the home too. And these are in butcher blocks. They're also on the wall, kind of that magnetic stand that these knives can hold on, can connect to inside of the kitchen. So she paints a picture of what is collected inside of the kitchen. Then we go up to Maxwell Anderson's bedroom, where there are other knives. There are other sheets that are collected. They also go into the living room too. So you kind of get an understanding that they are doing this wide-ranging search and documenting so many things inside of the house. What again stands out in the living room is the couch. There's a couch that they took a number of photographs of, and I believe, Brian, you said they took about 7 minutes or so just discussing this couch inside of the living room, talking about the wear and tear of the couch, right? It's not just any couch, it's an old pleather couch. The pleather really stood out to me. Not a leather couch, it was a pleather couch that they are really focusing in on, that is falling apart, but that will likely become part of a bigger story as this case plays out.
Yeah, you know, the discussion of the couch certainly seems to be a harbinger of things to come when we know from the opening statement that there's mention of a photograph extracted from Maxwell Anderson's phone of Sade Robinson on what prosecution says is Maxwell Anderson's couch. I imagine they're going to try to match up the two to say, see, that's his couch that she's laying on in this photo. There's something else from today I wanted to talk about, and that is, and this is actually not from today, Aaron. This was from yesterday, and I thought it was really interesting that we have seen, you mentioned the Carhartt shirt, that we saw that on the bus, we see that in his laundry. Even though I think it's been well established at this point that we're seeing Maxwell Anderson at all these places, the state, and I'm going to put this up right here, they put 3 photographs up side by side yesterday. One was the booking photo of Maxwell Anderson. That's on the left. The second was the photo of the person who got on the bus at 35th and Lisbon and rode it all the way back down toward Maxwell Anderson's house. This is the person who they detailed walking away from the car fire. And then on the right is Maxwell Anderson in that Carhartt shirt standing outside Duke's on Water smoking a cigarette. They presented that to the jury to say, look at these faces side by side. That's the same guy. And the point there was, while we might all at home go, yeah, we know that, they've got to prove to the jury, this is Maxwell Anderson in every one of these places, and in every one of these places he's somehow tied to Sade Robinson.
Absolutely. They got to put those photographs together and make it clear to the jury when we are talking about this man, and this man, we're talking about the same guy, and that guy is Maxwell Anderson. Another one for you, Brian, was the arrest video that came out a little bit later in the day, just before my 4 o'clock live shot. They made it clear this is also Maxwell Anderson. You're going to hear his voice. You're also going to see him being arrested for the first time too. There are different dates, they're different clothing, but this is the same guy, and it's all connected, as prosecutors are saying, to Sade Robinson, the first date, and the dismemberment of her as well, Brian.
There was one other thing about that video you talked about. This is the video of his arrest, and there was a mention by the officer involved in that arrest that they didn't tell Maxwell Anderson, you're being arrested for the death of Sade Robinson. They said, your tags are expired. But there were quite a number of squad cars. There were some unmarked cars around. They had their lights on, though. So the defense kind of looks at it and says, well, yeah, I mean, anybody might be nervous, but the prosecution pointed out that he was visibly shaking. I don't know how well that comes through in that video as you're watching it. Maybe as you're there live in person, it's more clear. What did you see with that? Were you able to tell? You said this came out right before your live shot, so maybe you didn't see it up close. But was it obvious that he was visibly shaking because he knows this is a bigger deal than just a ticket for an expired license?
You know, the defense really pounced on that testimony when they heard that, because they said, well, how many people are typically shaking or nervous or maybe bothered when they're being pulled over? The defense really pounced on that questioning, that line of questioning of Maxwell Anderson being visibly shaken or shaking, not only during that arrest moment, but also when he was being pulled over too. There was a moment when we heard Maxwell Anderson's voice, Brian, when he says, what is this for? What's this for? So, you know, Sade Robinson's name is not mentioned, but there's a lot of law enforcement there around him for this arrest, and he said, what's this for?
Well, Aaron, we know that you've got your own work to do aside of helping us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and we'll obviously check in with you some more as the week goes on. So that was Aaron Mabin. Oh, and that is still Aaron Mabin as I put that up there. Now, here I am. That's Aaron Mabin outside the Milwaukee County Safety Building, where the case is currently on its daily lunchtime recess. They are scheduled to resume at 1:45 this afternoon. In about 15 minutes, we're going to be joined by Julius Kim of the law firm Kim and Lavoie to give us his analysis of the new evidence we have heard and testimony we've heard so far today. When we come back, I'm going to take you through once again, if you're just tuning in, what we've heard so far today, where it fits into the bigger picture of things, and what we expect we're going to be hearing this afternoon and in the coming days. We'll do that right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Live Desk. I'm Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson. 1:04 p.m. on Tuesday, June 3rd. It's day 6 of the trial of Maxwell Anderson, the man charged in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson in April of 2024. It's the 5th full day of testimony. We have now heard from 56 witnesses in the case, And today, 7 of them so far on the stand. We ended testimony in the morning with Detective Kayla Bierke, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective. She's going to be back on the stand when they resume this afternoon. And something I'm going to talk to Julius Kim about in a little bit. There was some discussion amongst the attorneys and the judge right at the end of the morning session where during cross-examination of Detective Bierke, the defense attorney, Jason Findling, was asking some questions, and he raised a term called presumptive analysis. Had to do something to do with blood testing. I'm not entirely clear on how it fits into what his line of questioning was, but as soon as Megan Newport, the deputy district attorney on the prosecution side, as soon as she heard that, she immediately spoke up and said, "Judge, I want to have a sidebar." And they stopped, and the judge or the attorneys huddled around Judge Crivello. Then they resumed, and right a couple of minutes after that, the judge stopped everything for lunch and said, "Okay, send the jury out, go have a good lunch. Don't think about this for a while." And then she had a discussion on the record to talk about what happened at that sidebar. Apparently, there had been an agreement between the state and the defense not to talk about blood testing or presumptive analysis that was done on some of these items that were found in Maxwell Anderson's home. The parties had agreed that, the state doesn't go down that road, we won't go down this road, and they weren't going to talk about it. But as soon as the defense raised that term, presumptive analysis, that apparently opened the door for the state to now go down a line of questioning that they wanted to go down, but that they had agreed not to. They say the defense breached their agreement, the judge agreed, and so they say now we're going to go down that road. But right at the end, you heard Tony Cotton, who is the lead defense attorney, he said, well, if that door is open, then we're just going to go into a thorough examination of that ourselves. Right now, it is the defense that has the floor on cross-examination of Detective Bierke. So I suspect when we come back at 1:45, there's going to be a considerable amount of cross-examination that continues of that witness before the state goes on redirect. So she could take up a good portion of at least the early part of this afternoon. What we'll hear after that, we don't know. What we've heard so far today started with a continuation of Monday's testimony, which ended with a Milwaukee police homicide detective, Jake Pushing, who was on the stand talking about and showing security video from Duke's on Water, the second bar that Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson went to together on April 1st. They were on that date. They had started at Twisted Fisherman. Then they went to Duke's on Water. We find that not only is this a bar they went to together, but this is a place Maxwell Anderson knows pretty well, and people there recognize him. In fact, the brand new owner was the next witness. The new owner at that time of Duke's on Water, Tim Slugga, was called to the stand, and he pointed out that he had just bought the bar officially after having been there as a patron for many years. And Max Anderson knew about the purchase, saw him, and congratulated him on buying the bar and being the new owner. Anderson also was seen at the bar playing bar dice. There were images of Anderson and Sade Robinson sitting at the bar together, and then eventually 3 more people join them. There they are alone. You see them here. Then they are joined by 3 others that sit right at that corner of the bar, and you see the bartender, the female bartender behind the bar, who ends up bringing a cup with dice in, and the kind of thing you'd only hear in a Wisconsin homicide trial, but there's actually discussion and testimony about what bar dice is and how the game works and why that matters. Well, in this case, the defense attorney brought it up on cross-examination, asking, what is bar dice? Well, it's a game that's played typically by regulars at a bar, establishing that Maxwell Anderson was known here and seemed to be liked by other people. Also, that in playing the game, the loser of the game has to buy drinks for the others, and it appeared at one point Maxwell Anderson was responsible for a round of drinks for their friends. Now, I noticed the state kept going very methodically, drink by drink, through everything that happened, and it seemed that Sade Robinson was not participating in the shots, that she wasn't having as much to drink, she wasn't ordering drinks as frequently as Maxwell Anderson. So any suggestion that she was overserved, that she was out of her mind drunk, doesn't seem to match up with what the state is presenting here. At least that's what I could take from them going so methodically through that. But that was the first person who testified this morning. At 9:03 p.m., they leave Dukes on Water. And we had testimony from Nathan Spittelmeister, who is a detective also from the sheriff's office, who had surveillance video from the Milwaukee School of Engineering across the road. And they showed Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson leaving together and walking to Sade Robinson's car, getting in the car, and then driving and turning west onto McKinley Avenue. And that was crucial because the state says they have Life 360 data that shows her cell phone goes from Dukes on Water and turns from Water Street west onto McKinley, then gets on the interstate and goes south all the way down to Maxwell Anderson's home on South 39th Street. That image of the car going that way shows that we see the two of them get in together. They are both in the car together. It's not just Sade Robinson by herself. They turn on McKinley as the Life 360 data shows. That seems to demonstrate that it's not just one set of data, but we've got something else to back up that they are headed down to Maxwell Anderson's home. We also heard from Joanne Donner, who was recalled for probably about the fourth time. There was some discussion there of the search warrant executed at the 39th Street home. That seemed to be a little bit shorter of a sequence, so not too much of significance necessarily. On Defense Cross, they seem to be maybe raising some questions about how that search warrant was executed. Could be something for appeal. I don't know. It didn't seem particularly significant in the grand scheme of things. Hobie Love, a detective from the sheriff's office, was called to the stand. He responded to a witness, a civilian named Joseph Gagner, and Mr. Gagner had found some gloves along the lake shore that appeared to maybe have some blood on them. And this was about a quarter-mile south of where Sade Robinson's leg was found. Some time had passed. It was about a quarter-mile south, and we didn't really hear much more testimony about that yet. If those gloves are significant, we may hear more about that a little bit later on. This was a bit out of sequence, but there was a civilian. This was a former security, or maybe current, but it was a security worker for Dukes on Water at the time in April of 2024, Lemitra Griffin. Mr. Griffin was supposed to have testified earlier, wasn't present, but then came to the courthouse and did get inserted here as the 55th witness. And he essentially testified that he was familiar with Maxwell Anderson, that he had been a regular at the bar. And then we ended with Detective Bierke, who really spent most of the time going methodically through those photos in the home. And probably most significant of that is this red couch, or at least it seems it might be. This red couch is, they talked about the color of the couch, the shininess of the couch, the orientation of the couch to the ottoman there that is next to it. We've already heard in opening statements that this may come into play with a photograph that was pulled off Maxwell Anderson's phone that allegedly shows Sade Robinson face down on this couch. I presume they wanted the jury to see this in detail. They spent about 7 or 8 minutes talking about this furniture right here. I would imagine that would be to set up the photograph we're going to see later. We haven't seen it yet. I'm going to take a break right now, and when I come back, I do believe I see Julius Kim has tuned in, so we're going to have him join us. Julius Kim, the law firm of Kim and Lavoie. He is a criminal defense expert and also a former state prosecutor, to give us his thoughts, his analysis of what we heard so far today, and we'll talk to him when we come right back after this.
This is the This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here once again at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's about 1:45, or no, I'm sorry, not 1:45. It is about 1:15 on Tuesday, June 6th, or June 3rd. Boy, if I could get all these, just the date and time right, we'd be good here. It is Tuesday, June 3rd. Day 6 of the Maxwell Anderson trial and day 5 of testimony. And we are joined now by Julius Kim of the law firm Kim and Lavoie, who's been with us throughout this trial, offering his expert analysis of what we've seen and heard. And I'm going to make sure I've got you.
Are $55 annually.
I'm hearing ads advertising. Do I have the right thing up here, Delaney? Because I see Julius, but I think I hear other audio in the background.
For detailed information,
is it just me?
Milwaukee.gov/parking.
Okay, it sounded like there was an ad playing there in the background. But Julius, thank you for being here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. I am still hearing some music in the background. I hope that's not. Maybe it's just me. Can you hear that, Julius?
I heard it for a little bit, but it's gone now.
All right. Well, in any case, you've been watching the trial today. Anything that has stood out to you today that is particularly significant for either side?
Yeah, I think that the fact that the state is starting to set up different arguments for the rest of the case. You could see them methodically going through the search of Maxwell Anderson's house. And they're doing that, I think, for a couple reasons. One is that I think the state is very sensitive to this notion that they didn't conduct a very thorough search of the house, because there's not going to be any DNA that's relevant to this case that's going to be found or located within Maxwell Anderson's house. And I think that people are going to be wondering about that, especially in this day and age where there's DNA evidence seemingly everywhere. The juror is going to want to see some DNA evidence in this case, especially if the state's alleging that a murder happened, and not only a murder, but a murder and dismemberment happened inside Maxwell Anderson's house. So I think the state has been painstakingly trying to demonstrate that they searched that house up and down so far. Now, something you alluded to earlier, and I think we'll get to it in a little bit, there was a ruling that was made earlier this morning that the defense apparently violated, and that's something that's going to be really interesting to watch this afternoon.
I don't mean to interrupt our thought process, but I'm still hearing this music playing in the background. I just want to check. I know you're joining us via Zoom. There's not by any chance anything playing on another tab on your computer, is there? I don't want to blame you for it. It's probably on our end, but I want to make sure we're not missing anything.
I only have one tab open, and that is you guys.
Okay, so I don't know where that sound's coming from, but all right. Well, we've got somebody working on that in the background here. But if you're listening into this and it's a little bit distracting, my apologies. With regard to that sidebar that occurred right before the end of the afternoon, can you give us any insight as to what happened there? It sounds like there was some sort of agreement not to talk about stains that had been found in the home and what was those stains were tested for. The parties agreed not to talk about that, but then the defense asked something that seems to have opened the door to the state bringing this up. Can you tell us more about what that might be all about?
Sure. For a lot of people that don't know how trials work or have not been paying attention or watching every minute of this trial, a lot of times these trials can be run more efficiently if the parties come to agreements on what evidence is going to be allowed or not allowed, or how things are going to be framed, because there are very strong rules in terms of what can be presented in front of a jury or not, because they don't want a trial to be tainted. They don't want jurors to hear just anything. It has to be within the rules of evidence. And so earlier in the morning, the state put on the record that the defense and the state had agreed that they were not going to talk about the fact that other blood stains were found in Maxwell Anderson's apartment. I think there is a twofold reason for that. One is the defense does not particularly want it out there that there was additional blood stains that were found in Maxwell Anderson's apartment, even though none of the blood stains apparently matched those of Sade Robinson. But it just kind of paints, maybe this ick factor for Maxwell Anderson. What's going on there? Whose blood was it? Etc. So the defense and the state agreed that they would not present any testimony or any evidence of blood stains or blood samples on the walls. They agreed that they were going to call them stains. And there was this back and forth because the state wanted to say, listen, I don't want the jury to be left with the impression that the state crime lab's missing these things. But on the other hand, the defense doesn't want these to be labeled as blood stains. So they just agreed to call them stains. Well, during the defense cross-examination of this detective, kind of an oopsie happened, and that is the attorney during cross-examination talked about stains and talked about presumptive tests that the state crime lab people did within Maxwell Anderson's apartment. Well, those presumptive tests were for blood. And it was at that point in time that the state objected, asked for a sidebar, and it was determined by Judge Crivello that the defense opened the door. They violated the agreement that blood would not be talked about or referenced during the course of this search, but they violated that because they talked about these presumptive tests. And now the state doesn't want to be left with this notion of, well, there were these samples being taken, but no one knows what they're about. So that's where we're at. The judge is going to allow now the state to go into the fact that these were blood samples that were collected throughout Maxwell Anderson's apartment. But I think a full vetting of all the facts is going to show that I'm not sure that any of these blood samples are going to be relevant because none of it amounts to Sade Robinson's blood.
We're going to take a quick break and come back with more from Julius Kim, and we're going to do that right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson back here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is about 1:23 on Tuesday afternoon. We still have Julius Kim of Kim and Lavoie. And Julius, I think we finally got our audio issues squared away on our end. There was some sort of a musical leak coming in that was making it a little more difficult for us to pay attention to what you were saying. So our apologies on that. But I want to talk about the couch for a moment. This red couch, there's a lot of discussion about this one piece of furniture. Of all the things in the house, they spent about 7 or 8 minutes on this couch. It seems like that is probably tied. Am I wrong in thinking that's going to be tied to this photograph that's going to be coming from Maxwell Anderson's phone?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And people that watch trials have to listen for these foreshadowing moments because the state took a lot of time describing this couch, talking about what color it is, what it's made of, like this pleather material, almost too much. And that's because they're setting up this picture. I have a strong, although I haven't seen the photograph myself or photographs, I have a strong feeling that the picture is going to depict this red couch or Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson on this red couch. And it's going to be very, very clear on this photograph that it was this red couch that's right in the middle of Maxwell Anderson's apartment. That is a strong piece of evidence because that ties Sade Robinson directly to Maxwell Anderson's apartment the night of the incident. Presumably, they'll be able to support that. And also countering what the downstairs tenant said, that there was no one upstairs or there didn't appear to be any struggle going on upstairs.
I know we also haven't seen yet that ring video from across the street that is going to show some people that are upstairs inside, at least some silhouettes that we're going to see through the window. That's what we've been told is coming. But seeing Sade Robinson in an identifiable way directly there, that seems to extend that timeline. We know for certain they were together as of 9:03 p.m. when they were at Duke's on Water, and we heard one of the detectives answer a question, is that the last time she's seen on video in public? And they say, yeah, that's the last video. So what happened after 9:03? They've now got the Life 360 that takes her down there. This is a key to putting her in the house, right?
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of putting her inside of Maxwell Anderson's house, but I think what they're doing in the picture is going to be very relevant also. If they're in the middle of some type of sexual act or in some type of compromising position, well, that kind of tells a different story, right? It tells of a story that maybe they came back after being at Duke's at the bars that night, and they decided they were going to engage in some type of romantic behavior, so sexual behavior, and that kind of leads you to believe, I wonder if something went terribly sideways while that was going on that led to a chain of events that ultimately led to where we are right now.
We heard from about maybe a half dozen witnesses today, and there was a lot of sort of focus on whether or not Max Anderson was a regular at Duke's on Water. What's the significance there? Why does that matter, and which side does that help that he was sort of well-known and was a regular at this bar?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that helped that much, in all honesty. I want to say that it almost seems like they want to paint an image that Maxwell Anderson, was taking Sade Robinson to a familiar place, to a place that kind of his home territory, et cetera. I think the defense didn't mind getting into it because it shows that he wasn't taking her to places that were kind of shady or that he had some kind of plan to do something nefarious that night. So I don't think it shows anything more than the fact that he was well known at the bar. They spent a lot of time there together, and that there was no one else that was with them throughout the course of the night. I mean, they engaged with some other people at the bar, but that they weren't there with other people during the course of the night.
We heard from Hobie Love, a detective who talked about responding to the lakefront in South Milwaukee for some gloves that were found. Those gloves had blood on them. It wasn't a very long a bit of testimony, and we didn't really hear much more about. We still don't really know what are the significance of those gloves. Has that blood been tested? Did it come back to Sade Robinson? What do you think? I mean, I would imagine they're not calling that witness for no reason at all. What do we think the significance might be of those gloves with the blood spots?
Yeah, it was kind of weird that the state would call this deputy that retrieved these gloves that had blood spatter all over them, and then they didn't do anything more with it. You'd think that if there was something more significant that would help the state, that they would have gone into that, but they didn't do that. So I think this is another one of these situations where the state called a witness to kind of take the wind out of the defense sails. I have a feeling that the defense is probably going to either call a state crime lab analyst or someone else and have them testify to the fact that the blood that was found on those gloves did not belong to either Maxwell Anderson or Sade Robinson. And that would be a strong fact, right? Because there were other things that were alluded to, currents, that the gloves must have come down or flowed down just because of the currents of the lake from north to south is where they were discovered, and that these must be the gloves, but that these gloves presumably don't have Sade Robinson or Maxwell Anderson's blood on it. So I think that's going to be more of a thing that the defense goes into, but the state tried to take some of the wind out of their sails by introducing it first.
This afternoon, or this morning, I should say, we did, as we're going through some of these photographs inside Maxwell Anderson's home, we saw a lot of pictures of knives in the kitchen, in the living room, in the bedroom. There was even that pair of pants that had been sewn into like an armchair of a couch where the pockets were being used to store various tools, including a knife. None of them certainly had Sade Robinson's blood on them because we haven't heard anything like that. What's the significance, though, to showing the jury this is a guy who's got a lot of knives?
Yeah, it was weird how many knives are in the house, and I think that that's exactly what the state's trying to do. Again, this is a circumstantial case for the state, and the state knows that some of these things can play a certain way in a juror's minds. They showed pictures of the basement with this, bed down there. It almost looked like some type of, torture chamber or something down there. I'm not saying that that's what it was actually presented, but it looked odd, and it almost looked like some kind of dungeon down there. And then you couple that with all these knives being found all over the apartment, and in various locations, and that they were, there were, tools to sharpen them. It just paints this image of who Maxwell Anderson is, that he's a person that might be capable of doing something as horrific as what is alleged here.
I think the thing that we're all stuck with from the beginning of this is it seems like when you go through the timeline of everything that happened and you look at that basement, now the bed in the basement and the whole thing, you go, it seems to make the most sense that Sade Robinson was murdered and dismembered in that basement. And yet there's no DNA evidence anywhere of that, no other signs of it. Is it possible, this is the question I guess the jury has to be asking, is it possible that Maxwell Anderson was that good at cleaning up the scene, that it was so good the crime analyst couldn't find anything down there to connect him? Or is this something that happened somewhere else, or was it someone else altogether?
Yeah, I think all of the above. And it's possible that Maxwell Anderson was that good at cleaning up that type of presumably that big of a mess. That's possible. But I think in this day and age, there would have been something would have been found in terms of DNA evidence. It's also possible that the sheriff's department or the investigators were that bad in collecting evidence. And again, I think that's what the state is kind of sensitive to. They want to try and portray the sheriff's department, the investigators here, as doing a very, very good job, a very thorough job. But things are missed on occasion. And so that's possible also. And of course, it's possible that the death occurred in a way that didn't cause a lot of blood. There was no dismembering at the actual apartment, but the body after Sade Robinson was killed was moved, and a dismembering occurred at some other location where there would be more blood. And lastly, of course, there's a possibility and the presumption right now that Maxwell Anderson is innocent and he didn't do any of this.
I've tried not to do a lot of speculating, but sometimes when you have holes in this evidence, you have to ask, what other possibilities could there be? And we know that the phone dies at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's at Warner Mount Park. We know ultimately that's where her body parts are found. But many of the other body parts are not found for days. And you do, I guess there's the question of, did any of this take place in the ensuing days after this, or did it all happen at one time? And we know that by whatever it is, what time of the morning, 7:30 in the morning, the car's on fire. So it would presumably have happened in that overnight. The defense has certainly raised the question about, well, you didn't find the foot in the park for 3 or 4 more days. Could somebody else have done this? But I guess I'm thinking about that out loud, Julius, and even that doesn't make sense because the leg was found pretty quickly. I mean, within less than 24 hours.
Yeah, and then just the big question also is why dismember her in the first place? Why? And if you're going to dismember her, why scatter these parts all over the place? If the dismembering occurred down by the lake, why not just, again, I don't mean to sound crass, but dispose of the body in the lake and all together? Why dismember in the first place? And then why scatter body parts in different crime scenes, giving yourself more of a chance to get caught? Those are all questions that are going through my mind. And it is going through my mind also as to how these things could have been missed. Now, I understand we're talking about several different scenes here. Just geographically, we're talking about a big, square footage or acreage of land that has to be searched. But the fact that citizens are finding bits and pieces of evidence themselves, including this blanket with Sade Robinson's picture and face, and clearly it's her. And that was discovered in a location that was already searched, presumably by law enforcement. So I think part of the defense strategy here is also painting a picture that maybe maybe law enforcement has not done that thorough of a job or that great of a job in investigating this. They had tunnel vision as to who was involved in this and only focused on that. And because of that, there are still some doubts out there.
I do wonder then, was there an expectation that once we get inside that house, we're going to have all we need? We're going to have the bloody crime scene. We're going to have all the DNA. They get in there, and it's not necessarily there. They're really having to go a long way to find things that might point toward this having been Maxwell Anderson.
Yeah, it almost seems that way, that the way this was done, they go back, they see some shoes. One of the shoes in the photographs that were taken on the original search warrant that was executed at his house had, kind of these white soles. Those shoes weren't, at least far as I can tell, weren't taken into inventory. They were left there. And then, I don't know if they ever got those or not, but now suddenly, they don't have shoes. It just seems like there might have been some expectations that there's going to be more evidence that there was at Maxwell Anderson's apartment. Those things weren't there. They had to go back a second and third time. And that's all not helping the state's case because it's a circumstantial case. And the fact that they might not have done as thorough of a search the first time around is going to hurt them in the end.
What are you looking forward to as far as things we haven't heard yet, you think are coming, or things that you expect we will still hear before the state wraps up its case in chief?
Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot about these blood samples and blood stains this afternoon, more than I think both sides wanted to get into. But now that it's out there, and now that the judge has ruled that the defense has opened the door, we're going to hear about it. And I'm not sure it's going to really help either side. I think because none of those blood samples ultimately were of Sade Robinson. I guess, again, in listening to some of the comments made off the record, it sounds like Maxwell Anderson's blood was part of those blood stains and blood samples, and there might have been some animal blood that was there. But it's a big nothing as far as I'm concerned. I think that in the grand scheme of things, the defense would rather not talk about random flecks of blood all around Maxwell Anderson's apartment, but it's in now, so we're going to hear that fleshed out entirely. I also think we're going to hear more about the height. The state alluded to the fact that Maxwell Anderson's height, his demographics on his license, his state ID, and also the height of the fence. So I think they're going to try and shore that stuff up too also, and then we're going to see more evidence of this silhouette moving on the side of the house.
So that the ring camera stuff we haven't seen yet, so there's still more to come, but it sounds like we might get a little bogged down this afternoon in these bloodstains, which may not really have great significance in the end. But I do wonder, we had one other thing that happened off the record, which is discussion of some of the clothing found at the house that was female clothing that did not come back to Sade Robinson, and in particular, a women's bra that was found in the house. You start talking about there's a woman's bra that's found, we don't know whose it is, and then there's blood stains that don't belong to Sade Robinson. The prejudicial effect of that could be that the jury goes, oh my gosh, he's a serial killer, he's been killing other women. There's no testimony that supports that. I would imagine that's why the defense didn't want to be talking about this at all, but now they've opened the door.
They've opened the door, but they didn't open the door to that. And thank God, because then we'd have some big problems. And if Maxwell Anderson is convicted, this is all going to come back. We're going to be doing this all over again after an appeal. But that's a really good point you brought up, Brian, because that kind of went into Judge Crivello's ruling. And Judge Crivello has a tough job. The state wants to get as much evidence as they can, and even stuff that might be minimally relevant, but kind of paints Maxwell Anderson in maybe not the best light. Having women's clothes stuffed into the pillars in the basement of your house is just weird, and there has to be an explanation for that. And the defense didn't want that introduced for obvious reasons, for those same reasons. But the judge had ruled ultimately that she's not going to allow evidence that it was women's clothing, and particularly where they were found. They were just that fact that clothing was found during the search of Maxwell Anderson's house, because she has to balance the probative value, which means how much that will actually help the jury in making a decision versus the danger of unfair prejudice. All evidence is going to be prejudicial against one side or another by definition, right? The question is will it be unfairly prejudicial? Will the introduction of that bit of evidence cast such a light on the case that the jurors are going to have a hard time keeping it out of their mind and might decide the case on things other than the facts of the case? And I think Judge Crivello was spot on, quite frankly, about ruling that she can allow the state to go into the fact that clothes were found, but not what they were and where they found it.
I'm going to ask you one more question before we let you go today, and that's this. I appreciate all the time you spent with us, by the way, but do you watch these things and think to yourself, gosh, that's not how I would do it, or boy, if I was in there, I would? Or is it hard to make those observations because you haven't had direct access to all of the evidence?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and yeah, I can't help but sitting back there and questioning. I mean, I was a prosecutor and a defense attorney, right? So I'm looking at this from both sides, saying, I see why they're doing that, or did they have to do it that way? And they're, but it's easy for me to play armchair quarterback, on this side of it. Obviously, being in trial and having the pressure of all that is a whole different beast. But yeah, it's fun because I can be an active participant in this and watching things and seeing the strategy as to why they're doing things the way they're doing it, or what they may be up to, why they're asking a certain question. So it's interesting to from being in my position to look at it from both a prosecutor's perspective and a defense attorney's perspective. But I can tell you that both sides are really doing a phenomenal job. They're doing a great job in this case.
Well, Julius, if you're an armchair quarterback, and I'm an undrafted free agent on the practice squad, so we're really grateful for your insight and all of your help. And you've spent nearly half an hour here with us today on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Thank you again for all of your assistance, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Of course, happy to help. Talk to you later, Brian.
So there you go, Julius Kim of Kim and Lavoie here on Open.
Okay, thank you.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk at 1:42 on Tuesday, June 3rd. It is day 6 of the trial of Maxwell Anderson, who was charged in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. We are about 5 to 10 minutes or so away from the jury returning and testimony resuming for the afternoon here today. As I mentioned, this is the 6th day of the trial. It is the 5th day of testimony. We have now heard from 56 witnesses, several of them called for a second or third time. So 40-something individuals. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but if I counted them up, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, probably about 44 to 45 individuals who have testified so far. And we're going to be continuing with one of the same people or the same person who ended the morning session, and that is Detective Kayla Bierke of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. She was part of the team that searched Maxwell Anderson's home on 3 different occasions: April 4th, April 5th, and April 16th. And as we resume this afternoon, it will start with the defense leading cross-examination of Detective Bierke. And now it sounds like this could go on for a while, because during cross-examination just before the lunch break, you heard Julius Kim telling us the defense had raised some or asked some questions about stains that were found in Maxwell Anderson's home, and particularly blood stains. The defense said something that was a little bit of a mistake, because the parties had agreed, the defense and prosecution had agreed not to refer to these as blood stains. They were not detected to be blood of Sade Robinson. So each side sort of has its reasons for maybe wanting to talk about, but also maybe not really wanting to talk about it. The state, for instance, it doesn't particularly help their case to say there's bloodstains other than Sade Robinson's in the house, unless, of course, they could tie them to some other specific individual. It sounds like the blood came back to Maxwell Anderson and maybe even an animal. On the other hand, the defense doesn't really want discussion of bloodstains at all because, considering the nature of this case, it would be better probably for the defense to just not talk about that at all. So they were just going to refer to them as stains. The defense made some comments that the prosecution pounced on, called for a sidebar, told the judge they felt the defense had breached their agreement, and the judge agreed. So the state said, we're going to ask about that now. And defense attorney Tony Cotton said, now, before you do that, we're just going to go thoroughly through all of that on our own during cross-examination. So we're probably going to get a significant amount of discussion about these blood stains found elsewhere in Maxwell Anderson's home to start off the afternoon, and no idea how long that is going to take. Some of the other things that we are waiting to hear about that we know are coming because of what was forecast during the opening statement by the prosecution is ring video from across the street of Maxwell Anderson's house that presumably, from what we've been told, shows silhouettes of people, 2 individuals upstairs in the unit that Maxwell Anderson occupied there at that house on 39th Street. We haven't seen that yet, so we expect that is still going to be shown. We have not seen the photographs that we are told were extracted from Maxwell Anderson's phone, which he still had on his person when he was arrested a few days later. Those photographs, according to how they were described in opening statements, will show Sade Robinson face down on Maxwell Anderson's couch, with Anderson grabbing her right breast, and also one of them that shows Sade Robinson's clothing being removed, specifically her pants and underwear. We haven't seen them. We can't really evaluate the significance of those photographs, but we expect we're going to see that. And I think that's why they spent so much time talking about that red couch. And I'm going to pull that up here for you again in a moment. It's right here. This red couch in Maxwell Anderson's living room, they spent about 7 or 8 minutes talking about that, and also that ottoman, that brown ottoman that's right next to it that you can see there. I think you can see the ottoman a little bit better in this photo, still down at the bottom. It's kind of dark. There was a lot of talk about that couch, the fact that it had sort of a shiny surface, that the part you lay on or sit on is worn, looks like it's been sat on for a long time. The color obviously was of note. I would suspect, and again, all speculation, but I suspect that when you take a photograph with a cell phone, if Maxwell Anderson was himself taking a photograph of Sade Robinson on the couch, it would probably be at a fairly close focal distance. In other words, you're not going to see the whole room. You're not going to see this whole couch. You're going to see her, and you're going to see the material that is underneath her. And I'm guessing that is why the state spent so much time here, is to try to match the two together, that you can see the photo and go, yep, that looks like the same couch that's in Maxwell Anderson's living room. It not only puts her there, but as attorney Julius Kim pointed out, if in fact it suggests there was some sort of sexual or romantic activity taking place at that point, it might tell us a little bit of a different story about where the night went after what looked like a fairly innocuous date out. They had some drinks, they played some beer pong, they played some bar dice, but there didn't seem to be much more significant than that. It seemed like a rather, I shouldn't say mundane, but a rather typical date out between two people. If the couch photo becomes significant, that it says this escalated into something more romantic, as Julius Kim put it, then it could raise questions about, did something go terribly wrong at that point or after that led to her death and ultimately to her dismemberment. We still have to wait and see what comes of all of that. It does feel like the state has gotten a significant way through its case, but no real idea how much farther they have to go. I would imagine it is not going to close today. The state is probably going to be continuing its case in chief at least tomorrow, if not another couple of days. And then, of course, the defense has witnesses that the defense plans to call on its own, and that will take some time. Then we'll get into jury instructions, which that will take a fair amount of time. And finally, the jury will have this case to deliberate. We did have one very brief moment today where the jury was sent out of the room, and one particular juror, that was juror number 52, was kept behind. Turns out it was someone who just had a little bit of an upset stomach. She asked for some Sprite. She got the Sprite. Seems like everything's been okay ever since, because we haven't heard any more of that. But even if a juror were to become ill, there are 3 extras. There are 3 alternates, ultimately, who are on the jury, 15 total. Nobody knows who the alternates are yet, because that's not determined until the end of testimony and after closing arguments. Then they will draw straws, or some other lottery system will determine who the 3 are that will be excused, and the final 12 will go into the jury room to deliberate. No idea when that's going to happen. Could happen later this week. It could be next week. We're going to keep following this all along for you, and of course, we will be here on the Wisconsin Live Desk throughout. We're here from noon to 4 every day, bringing you analysis, updates, and of course, live testimony as it happens. You can see the flagpole right now. You see that gold eagle on top of the American flag. That is the camera shot that we get whenever the court is in recess, either that or the clock on the wall. Right now it's a shot of the eagle, so we can see that the jury has not come back. I haven't seen any indication from Bill Miston, who's in the courtroom. Usually he sends us a quick Slack message to say the jury's back, and that means it'll be not long before they get underway. I don't see anything indicating the parties are back in the courtroom at this point. But it should be pretty much any minute. The judge said they would be back on the record at 1:45. It's now 1:50, and that's been about when they've been resuming each day throughout the trial. It's a little late now since we haven't really heard much of any movement in the courtroom, but I suspect that will be happening fairly soon. I'm going to try to make sure I'm in our Maxwell Anderson trial thread. And yeah, not seeing any additional updates at the moment, so it should be coming shortly. Oh, just as I said it, I just heard it, and there it is from Bill Miston. Anderson now in court along with the parties. The jury is not there. So we'll have to wait for the jury to be called in, and then this should be getting underway pretty shortly, and we will send you back out. Testimony will resume. If there are any breaks between now and the end of the day, which presumably there will be at least 1, if not 2, I'll be here to bring you up to speed on anything you might have missed. The jury is now coming into the courtroom, so as soon as I hear that we've got something coming from the courtroom, audio-wise, we're going to send you out there for the afternoon. And as I said, I'll be here through 4 o'clock, and then we'll bring you Fox 6 News at 4, 5, and 6. You can always watch the testimony through the end of the day on the Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube stream as well. We appreciate you being here, checking in with this case. We're 6 days in. We got a little bit of a ways to go, but stay with us. We'll bring you all the latest on the trial and try to catch you up to speed on the things you've missed as you go about your day. We know you can't necessarily watch every single second, but we do. We have multiple eyes on this case, and we'll keep you up to speed as we go. Still seeing the eagle and the flag, And now we are hearing that it will be Detective Kayla Bierke still on the stand, so we must be getting close. I'm getting updates from Bill Misson from the courtroom, but still not hearing any audio. Are you hearing anything? You're not hearing anything? No, we're still not hearing anything just yet. As I said, 56 witnesses so far. This will be a continuation of the 56th witness with Kayla Bierke on the stand. And I suspect, well, it's hard to say how many we'll hear from this afternoon if they go into great detail on these bloodstains. We do know in advance the bloodstains don't belong to Sade Robinson. What they are and what significance they have remains to be seen. Neither side was going to talk about this very much until the defense made a mistake just before the lunch break that opened the door.
Calling State of Wisconsin.
And there it is. I hear them
Maxwell
calling the case,
Anderson,
so we're going to send you out there now
24
to
CF
Milwaukee County Courthouse.
1692 appearances.
Megan Newport and Ian Vance Curzan appear for the state.
Jason Finling and Anthony Cotton on behalf of Maxwell Anderson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you had a nice lunch. Hasn't started raining yet, but it's supposed to any moment, so we lucked out with that timing. We're still on the state's case in chief. State, are you prepared? Oh, we're still during the last witness. Where is our last witness?
She's here.
Oh, wonderful. Can you retake the stand? And we're going to re-swear you because we have a new court reporter this afternoon. We still are on the state's case in chief. We're on the cross-examination.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can please be seated, restate, and respell your name for the record.
Detective Kayla, K-A-Y-L-A, last name Bierke, B-J-E-R-K-E.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Judge. So I think I left off, I was kind of talking about the staircase in this apartment. Do you remember the staircase?
Yes.
And you remember kind of how it's set up? It's not like an up and down staircase, right?
From the first to the second floor, no.
Okay, and it's like kind of like I wouldn't call it a spiral staircase, but it's almost like half spiral, right?
Correct.
If I show you photos of that, do you think you'd recognize it?
Yes.
The staircase, obviously.
Yes.
Commissioner Coach,
You may.
I'm showing you exhibits 808 through 813. You recognize those?
Yes.
So what were those photos of the staircase?
Yes, they were.
I moved 808 through 813 in.
No
Any
objection.
objection?
Asked to publish?
We spoke at the exact same time. Any objection?
No objection.
I will receive them into evidence and you may publish.
All right, so I'm showing you 808. So this is kind of the first part of the staircase, right?
Yes, from the first floor.
And then 809. That's where is that a photo from, like kind of like part way up that staircase, right?
That would be from the landing. So at that landing where they're standing right now, that's where they would be able to enter into Pete's like apartment or like house area of the house. So that's where you'd be able to enter the first floor, is right where the photo's being taken.
Okay, and then if you keep going up those stairs, you can get up to Max's apartment, right?
Correct.
810. That's just another photo of continuing to go up the stairs, right?
Correct.
And then 811, this is another landing space on that same staircase, right?
Correct.
And then we have 812, that's just another photo of that landing.
Yes.
And then 813, that's a view from, just higher up on the staircase facing down, right?
Correct.
And if we're looking at 808, you can kind of see these stairs, they're wooden, right?
Correct.
And how this is set up, you go up the stairs and you kind of have to wind around, right?
Yes.
And these stairs, if you look at them, they were dirty, right?
Ish, yes, I guess I would say.
Because it looks like you can see like dust and dirt on the stairs.
Correct.
They didn't look like they had been freshly cleaned, right?
Correct.
And then when you get to the top of that staircase, you can ultimately go into kind of the living quarters of Max's apartment, right?
Yes.
And in that living quarters, there's a big kind of bay window, right?
That faces east to 39th Street, yes.
Okay, and it faces like the city street, right, where cars can park.
Correct.
And then directly below that window is kind of where you would enter Pete's apartment, right?
I believe so, yes.
If I show you a photo of that window, you think you'll recognize it?
Yes.
Permission to approach.
Go ahead.
I'm showing you Exhibit 814. Is that the window that faces the street?
Yes.
I move 814 in.
Any objection? No, it's received.
Ask to publish.
Go ahead.
Okay, so is that big window?
Yes, it is.
And then if you're looking out that window, you can see, it looks like the neighbor across the street's house.
Correct.
And that's a pretty big window. It's like, I mean, did you measure how large a window that is?
No, we did not.
Okay, but it's fair to categorize that as kind of like a bay window, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you can see that's that red couch to the right of to the right of the picture. This is was this the same couch where that flannel was found on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you just found that flannel, it's just laying out on the couch, right?
Correct.
And do you remember what was next to the flannel?
I believe it was like a waitress apron.
Yeah, there's like a waitress apron, kind of the waiter's notebook where they write people's orders on it, and then like a black little pamphlet.
Correct.
Where the waiter keeps like, the bill and everything right inside, right? Commissioner, approach.
Please.
I'm showing you exhibits 815 and 816. That looked like the waiter stuff I was talking about?
Yes, it did.
All right, I move 815 and 816 in.
Any objection? No, received.
Ask to publish.
Go ahead.
All right, so we can see here, that's like the waiter notebook, right?
Correct.
That's like the little envelope they carried in.
Yes.
I don't know the word for it. And then to the right, that's where the apron is, right?
Correct.
And those are just lying right on that couch, right?
Yes, they are.
And then 816, we can see on the left side of that photo, that's that flannel sweatshirt, right?
Correct.
And then the waiter stuff is just hanging out right next to it, right?
Yes.
And through your investigation, did you learn that Mr. Anderson worked as a bartender or a waiter?
I believe that was told to me, yes.
Do you know where he worked?
I believe he worked at Victor's.
Okay, did you know if he worked anywhere else?
I am not aware if he worked anywhere else.
Okay. And did you ever personally go to Victor's?
No, I did not.
Okay, do you know if any other detectives went to Victor's?
I believe Deputy Ethan, Ethan, Stout, Stoudt, went there, but I'm not sure who else went there.
And you're not sure if they searched like any of the employee lockers there?
I have no idea.
Okay. And during your search, you also found a red and black backpack, right?
I believe so, yes.
And that was located in Mr. Anderson's bedroom, right?
Correct.
I'm showing you exhibit 817, and tell me if this is the backpack that you saw.
Yes, it is.
I move 817 in
Any objection? No, it's received.
and ask to publish.
You may.
Showing you 817, this right here is that black and red backpack, correct?
Correct.
And that was just kind of hanging like halfway in the closet, halfway on the ground.
Correct.
And you can also see that there's kind of clothes laying around, and this is the bedroom floor, right?
Right.
And there's kind of clothes just laying out throughout that whole house, the whole apartment, right?
Correct.
And then I think what you opened that evidence package just a little while ago when you're on direct, and you revealed that Carhartt shirt, right?
Yes.
And that Carhartt shirt was the one you believe that he was wearing on his date with Sade, right?
We believe so, yes.
Okay. And you know if that was photographed?
Yes.
I'm showing you exhibits 818 and 819. And are those photos of that Carhartt shirt that you found?
It is.
I move 818 and 819 in, I'm sorry.
Any objection?
No.
They're received.
Ask to publish.
Go ahead.
All right, so this is one photo of the shirt, and you said you found this in the dryer, right?
Yes, and one set of the dryers.
Okay, but that flannel sweatshirt was just laying out on that red couch upstairs, right?
Correct.
And then another photo, 819. This is the same condition you found that shirt in, right?
The shirt was found in the dryer. We just pulled it out of the dryer to take a photo.
But it's in the same condition as it was when it was in the dryer. You didn't manipulate it other than moving it from the dryer out to the tarp that it's on.
Correct.
And did you observe it to be ripped or torn in any way?
Not that I'm aware of.
And that was just in the dryer. It wasn't like hidden, like behind any pieces of furniture, right?
Correct.
It wasn't like under a mattress
No.
or in the trash.
No.
It wasn't like partially burned in any way.
No.
And you can clearly see that Carhartt lettering, and that white lettering, right?
Correct.
Don't see any stains on it.
No.
And then in the basement, you said that you located the workbench, right?
Correct.
And that just had a bunch of miscellaneous types of tools.
Correct.
And you can't say if any of them are missing, right?
Correct.
Just a standard tool that you might find in someone's workbench, someone who likes woodworking, right?
Possibly, yes.
And through your investigation, when you initially came to the house, did you ever detect like an odor of bleach
Not that I can recall, no.
or ammonia?
Not that I can recall, no.
And those are kind of substances that, as a detective, you might commonly see someone try to clean something up with one of those substances, right?
Correct.
But you didn't detect any of those substances in this case, right?
I did not.
And did you ever go in with like a black light to determine whether there had been anything that had just been cleaned up?
I don't believe we did.
Okay. But you've done that in cases in the past, right?
Personally, I've only used it in a vehicle, but I've never used it in a residence.
Okay. But that's something that you could do, right?
Correct.
And you went through the trash at this residence, right?
I believe somebody went through the trash, yes.
Okay.
I personally did not.
Okay, and you didn't find any empty bottles of bleach or ammonia, right?
I'm going to object. She said she doesn't have personal knowledge of this.
Any response?
No, I'll just move on. I can withdraw my question. She
Okay,
doesn't have
questions
personal.
withdrawn. Next question.
And so, like you said, there's three searches in total, but two of them, one's on April 4th and then into April 5th, right?
Technically, there was 4 searches. So one started April 4th, went into the 5th, but that included 2 search warrants. The second one or technically the third one happened on the 6th, and then the last one happened on the 16th.
Okay, and then from the 4th to the 5th, you said that the scene was secured, right?
Correct.
So an officer stays out front or out back all night, right?
Correct, as well as inside of the residence.
And once you had executed the warrant on the 4th, you said that there was media and news reporters that were on scene at that time, right?
I believe so. It wasn't until later in the night that they came on scene.
Okay, but it was still during that search on the 4th, right?
Correct.
So there's multiple people coming. They're not necessarily on scene, but they're kind of across the street, right?
Correct.
So there's news teams, right?
Yes.
Cameramen,
Yes.
photographers,
Yes.
reporters.
I believe so.
Lots of different people outside of that residence, right?
On the other side of the street, yeah.
Okay, and then after you finished the search on the 5th, did police officers remain on and freeze the house, or did you close the crime scene at that time?
The crime scene was closed at that time.
Okay. And the reason why you close or freeze a crime scene is to make sure that no one comes in or comes out, right?
Closing is different than freezing, I would say.
Okay, so freezing it means that no one can come in and come out, right?
Correct.
And then when you close it, it means that it's back open to the public?
Or the owners of the residence, yes. The house was turned over to an owner of the residence, or it was locked and secured so that nobody could regain entry to that residence.
So after you finished the search on the 5th, that's when you closed it, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then police presence wasn't there anymore at that point?
Correct.
And so any of the homeowners could come and go, right?
Correct.
And you're aware that people from the community were kind of outside of the residence, right?
I did see some pictures that were posted on social media from it, yes.
And people were actually inside the house too, right?
I do not know of that.
Okay. But the main purpose of freezing is so people don't taint evidence or move evidence, right?
Correct.
And because there wasn't a police presence after the search on the 5th, you don't know who went in and who went out of that house.
Correct.
Or if any evidence was moved or taken.
The evidence from the 4th and 5th was already collected and recovered from the residence, but anything past that, I don't know.
But not everything in the whole entire residence was taken by the police, right?
Correct.
Some things were left in the residence.
Correct.
And you never found, and this backpack that so you attended some briefings where you saw photos of Max on a city bus, right?
Yes.
And you did that, and you attended those briefings before some of these searches, before the one on the 6th, probably?
I believe so, yes.
And so you knew what backpack you were looking for, right?
Correct.
But you didn't find that on your search on the 4th or the 5th, right?
Correct, because we didn't know we were looking for that at that time.
Okay. And one thing that you testified about just earlier this morning is that, the house was kind of messy, but you didn't believe that there's any sign of a struggle, correct?
Correct.
No sign of a fight?
Correct.
Or a disturbance?
Correct.
It's just kind of an untidy house?
Yes.
Like chairs weren't knocked over or anything like that?
Correct.
Pictures weren't knocked off the wall?
Nope.
Okay. And during your briefing, you'd said that you'd seen photos of Max wearing these shoes with white soles, right?
Yes.
Did you ever look at like a briefing video of him walking on the street?
I don't believe I watched any videos regarding that.
Okay. And because you said that you ultimately don't believe you found those shoes that he was seen wearing on the bus, right?
Correct.
Do you know what brand of shoes he was wearing on the bus?
No.
So you don't know the company that makes them?
I don't.
What steps did you take to identify what type of shoes, what company
I
shoes?
didn't do anything to identify the shoes or anything like that. I was not in charge of the bus video.
But you did locate shoes inside of the residence, right?
Correct.
Did you find any that were like covered in sand?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And you would have recovered those, correct?
Correct.
And then throughout the house, you talked about how you had identified stains, even as small as, like, I believe you said an eraser tip?
Yes.
But you didn't find any large pools of blood, correct?
Correct.
No stained towels?
No.
No wet mop?
No.
And as you said that, you know that you might not have personally done it, but some officer searched the trash, right?
Possibly, yes.
And they probably would have brought it to your attention if they found, blood, right?
I would assume if they knew it was blood, they would have said something, yes.
And you also, you talked about how there was a closet that you couldn't see at first, but if you moved that kind of that armory or that big cabinet, there was a kind of a closet behind it, right?
Correct.
But you didn't find any items of evidentiary value other than that bong, right?
Correct.
You didn't find like a knife
Not that I can recall.
or a saw?
No.
There was just some miscellaneous clothing in there, right?
Correct.
Among other things, but for the
Yes.
most part, just we saw clothes hanging on hangers, right?
Yes.
I don't have anything further.
State. Showing you Exhibit 466 again. You were asked on cross about several items of clothing. I think it's clear that there were a lot of articles of clothing that were seen within the residence. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you found a backpack,
Correct.
but not the backpack seen in this picture.
Correct.
And in the residence, you did not find this black jacket or sweatshirt, gray black jacket or sweatshirt,
Correct.
and you did not find the pants,
We did not.
and you did not find the shoes.
No, we did not.
Showing you Defense Exhibit 816. On this red couch, do you remember seeing this item that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
What was that?
I believe it was a package. I can't recall for sure.
But you recall seeing that in that position?
Yes.
Okay, and it's blue and kind of flat?
Yes.
Fair? On April 4th and into April 5th, you've testified that you weren't sure what you were looking for specifically, correct?
Correct.
Because at this point, you hadn't discovered a lot of information yet.
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about the crime lab response. You testified that they examined certain stains, correct?
Correct.
Did some of those stains appear to be blood stains?
They did.
The stains in general, can you describe what the size range of those were?
They would be anything smaller from like a tiny speck, which would be like a needle point, to quite literally, I would say nothing bigger than that eraser tip of a pen or a pencil.
And as the crime lab's identifying these stains, nobody knows if they're human DNA or not.
Correct.
Could be a food stain.
Correct.
Could be something from an animal.
Yes.
Okay. So there was some testimony about presumptive analysis. What is that?
Presumptive analysis is when you do a test, and based upon the test, you can get an indication of a yes or a no for that.
A yes or a no for what?
The yes or a no for they were testing for human blood at this time.
And did the crime lab do that?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Did some of the items that they identified as stains test presumptively positive for human blood?
A few did, yes.
Okay. You're aware, though, that none of them ultimately tested positive for Sade Robinson's DNA, correct?
Correct.
You testified on direct and talked about the knives that were located, correct?
Correct.
And what did the state crime lab do as it relates to those knives?
They conducted a presumptive test on each one of the knives.
And that was there on scene, correct?
Correct.
And you are aware of what the results were?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that there was no human blood found on those knives?
Correct.
Going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit 469 and ask you if you know what that is.
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's a picture of the knives that were tested in the kitchen for the presumptive test.
These were some of the knives, correct?
Correct.
I'd ask that 469 be received and published.
Any objection?
None.
It's received.
What is this note down here, PHTH with a negative sign?
That's a note from the crime lab stating that all those knives tested negative on the pathology test or the test that they conducted for the human blood.
Are you familiar with what a serrated knife blade is versus a non-serrated knife blade?
Yes.
Can you tell what is the difference?
The difference is in the model of the blade, so you will see the jagged edges versus the smooth edges.
So for example, the knife that I'm pointing to, would that be a serrated or non-serrated blade?
A serrated blade.
In between the search warrants that occurred on the 4th and the 5th, you testified that there were law enforcement officers that remained on scene, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you went back on April 6th, did it appear that the house had been broken into at all?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did it appear that anything had changed since you had been in it last?
No.
At the point when you were searching the house, specifically the living room, were you aware of photos that had been recovered from the defendant's cell phone?
No.
Nothing further.
Defense?
So you collected every knife inside of that home, correct?
The crime lab did, yes.
The crime lab did, right? But you testified that no blood were found on any of the knives, right?
Correct.
And you did test some substances, and some of the swabs were taken were positive for blood, correct?
Correct.
Including Mr. Anderson's blood, right?
I don't know the exact human blood. It just tests positive for human blood, not a certain person's blood.
But some of those substances were just animal blood, or not?
I can't say whether they were animal blood or not.
Okay. But I think you said this just now, was that they're just very small, I guess, drops or specks, right?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
State?
Nothing.
Thank you, Detective. Thank you. State your next witness.
We'll briefly recall Detective Donner.
That the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can please be seated, restate and respell your name for the record.
Detective Joanne, Joann, Donner, Donner.
Detective Donner, you returned to Maxwell Anderson's house on April 16th for that final search, is that right?
That's correct.
One of the reasons you went to the house was you wanted to look at the red couch, correct?
That's correct.
And I have a Defense Exhibit 816 on the screen right now. What made you interested in returning to the house to look at the couch?
By April 16th, we had gotten the phone download back from Maxwell Anderson's phone, and on the phone there were some photos that had the sofa and also that blue, it's actually a pillow.
Okay, I didn't hear that, your response.
The blue pillow.
Thank you.
Who was in those photos?
Sade Robinson.
Did you want to check the couch to see if there were any stains or any other evidence?
Yes.
And did you in fact locate what you believed to be some stains?
Yes, there are some areas of the red that were darker red.
Was this done with crime lab personnel present again?
It was.
Were those stains presumptively tested for the presence of human blood?
They were.
What was the results of those presumptive tests?
Negative.
Did you opt to do further DNA testing on those stains?
We did not.
And why not?
We felt it would be redundant. We knew that she was on that sofa based on the photos, so obviously her DNA would be there. It wouldn't really tell us anything different.
You see me sitting in this chair right now. You don't have to DNA test the chair to know I was sitting here, right?
Correct.
Okay, nothing else.
Defense? Thank you, Detective. State your next witness.
Andrew Sullivan.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You can please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
Andrew Sullivan, AndrewSullivan.
How are you employed?
As a detective with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office,
How long have you been with the sheriff's office?
9.5 years.
Were you working in that capacity on April 4th, 2024?
Yes.
On that date, did you assist with a search warrant execution at the address of 3161 South 39th Street in the city of Milwaukee?
Yes.
What was your role that day?
Searching for evidence.
Did you also have contact with the lower tenant of that residence?
Yes.
And did you actually go inside the lower of that residence?
Yes.
Are you aware of the lower tenant's name?
Pete Warbington.
And did Pete Warbington give law enforcement permission to search his residence?
He did.
And what did you do?
We had him sign a consent to search form, and then we searched the residence. The lower unit, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
After he signed the consent to search form, we searched the residence.
So he gave you permission?
Written permission, yes.
Did you find anything of note?
No.
Nothing of evidentiary value?
No.
Was Mr. Warbington cooperative?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Cross.
Nothing on this topic, that's fine.
Thank you. State your next witness.
Detective Vincent Lopez.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You can please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
Vincent, Vincent, Lopez, Lopez.
How are you employed?
I'm a detective with the City of Milwaukee Police Department.
What unit are you assigned to?
I'm on the cold case of the homicide unit.
How long have you been in the homicide unit?
Approximately 5 years.
And you said you're assigned a cold case?
Yes.
What does that mean?
I primarily work on older cases. We say roughly 5 years or older. We investigate those. We follow leads on that when we develop information or get phone calls from people who want to talk to us about them. But we also help with active or newer cases.
back in early April of 2024, did you assist with the investigation to the disappearance of Sade Robinson?
Yes, sir.
On April 8th of 2024, did you attend a briefing in which Ms. Robinson's disappearance was discussed and you were given information about the update in the investigation, if there was any?
Yes, that's when I first became involved with this investigation.
All right. Why don't you tell me how you became involved on April 8th?
I was at the briefing and I was informed of the update of what had occurred over off of 30th and Lisbon.
Objection, hearsay.
It's offered to explain what he did next.
If it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but for the effect on the listener, I'll allow it. You can answer the question.
I was informed that there was an arson of a vehicle on 30th and Lisbon, our Galena area. I was informed of a person of interest. I was a white male carrying a backpack based off of video. So myself and my partner at the time, Detective Thaddeus Schimmels, we were tasked with trying to locate any video in that neighborhood of 30th and Galena on April 8th and April 9th.
And in your searches for videos, I take it you weren't the only detectives over there searching, correct?
That's correct.
Were videos recovered in the area that showed a person walking away from that burned vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And ultimately, did that lead you to searching the area near that person's residence?
Yes.
And who was that person?
Maxwell Anderson.
So on April 8th, you joined because you're going to start, you all were helping with the video canvas near the burned vehicle. And by April 9th, you had switched gears, correct?
Yes, we actually also the 8th, we did like a secondary search near the railroad tracks. We looked for video, we collected video. And then the 9th, we pivoted to look for video and do follow-up near 3161 South 39th Street, which is the residence of Mr. Anderson.
The video search near the railroad tracks, was that a result of Sade Robinson's body parts being found in the playground off 31st and Galena?
Objection, leading.
It is leading.
Why did you search the area of the railroad tracks for video?
So when I was briefed on the 8th, I was informed that body parts were found over the weekend near the railroad tracks of 30th and Galena and Walnut.
Okay. And by April 9th, then what happened? What did you do?
Myself and Detective Schimmels went to the area of 3161 South 39th Street. Video was already begun collection in that neighborhood, but we were doing further follow-up to find more video, to locate any residences that did not provide video yet. While we were in that neighborhood, we decided to do we call it a search of the neighborhood in some yards and garbage carts and recycling carts.
Did you specifically search garbage and recycling carts in the 3100 block of South 39th Street?
Yeah, so we started West Oklahoma Avenue. We decided to kind of do a grid search of all the garbage carts. We went, started on Oklahoma, I think there's about 5 or 6 houses there between 39th and 40th. Started opening carts. After starting that, we realized that all these carts were empty or there was very little garbage. So right away, our mind was like, well, garbage just got picked up either today or Monday morning.
And this was on, I'm sorry, continue.
This was on Tuesday afternoon on the 9th. Regardless, we continued the search of garbage carts and recycling carts down the alley to the south going to Euclid. And there's at least a dozen residences between Oklahoma and Euclid, which includes 3161 South 39th. I was on the east end of the alley. Detective Schimmels was on the west end of the alley. Just kept going through. My mind, I was just trying to hope that we found like the large backpack that I saw on video or something that just stuck out. Kept going, and I recall that day, that afternoon, we got toward the end, closer to Euclid, so it was a few houses past the defendant's address. I remember opening one of the garbage carts and seeing an article of clothing at the bottom, but it didn't hit me at that point, and I just closed it and kept searching garbage carts. My mind was that everything got picked up by the DPW, and any evidence that would have been in carts would have been lost.
All right, I have on the screen right now, I think this is marked as Exhibit 443 already and entered. It was moved in last week. We're looking at Oklahoma Avenue where my mouse is on this map, and then below that is Euclid, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so then this street where my mouse is would be what street?
41st.
All right. This street?
South 39th Street.
All right. And then this right here where my mouse is what?
That would be the alley. It was a T alley. You can see where you're pointing right now with the cursor. That was the Oklahoma Avenue addresses that we searched first, and then we walked south to Euclid.
And where would the defendant's residence be around on this map if you want to get up and just point?
It'd be a little bit further south of mid-block, so I would say right around here, 3161.
So you and Detective Schimmels are just going up and down this alley, lifting the tops of the garbage carts and really not seemingly finding that there was anything in any of them?
Correct, yeah, they are all empty.
After you wrapped up for the day on April 9th, tell us what happened next.
Well, we went about continuing the investigation the 10th and 11th, continued follow-up, reviewing video that was collected, looking for more video on the north side. And then I attended a briefing on April 11th in the evening. And that's when I was alerted to somebody had put a collage of 5 still photographs of the defendant on a bus, getting off a bus off 35th and Lakefield. And I saw that at the briefing in the evening, and they were really clear photos of the hooded sweatshirt that Mr. Anderson was wearing. So then at that point, it just went through my mind that I should probably follow up on that garbage cart where I saw article of clothing.
I've got 458, which has already been admitted on the screen now. Is this the photos that you were talking about that you saw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did it hit you after you saw that on the briefing? What day was that briefing?
The evening of April 11th.
At that briefing, it kind of hit you that you might have seen something?
Yeah, it hit me that it clicked that might be related to this case, what I saw in that cart, but I was still doubtful because the DPW went through that alley and picked up all the garbage on that whole block.
What date would DPW have gone through that block?
It was Monday, April 8th.
Do you know in your experience if DPW will pick up the carts that are empty?
It depends from what I understand.
I'm going to object on hearsay at this point.
I'll sustain the objection, but the answer will stand due to timeliness. Next question.
So did you go back to that location?
Yes, on Friday morning, April 12th at approximately 9:20 a.m., I wanted to clear my mind of seeing what I saw in that cart. So I went back to that location and I went through the carts again, and I came across a gray hooded sweatshirt at the bottom, and I saw a seam on it. Before I touched it at all, I saw a seam on the back of the hood, which I could see on that still photo you just had up.
Okay. Did you collect that item?
Yes, I called Detective Schimmels, who met me at that location. We took photographs and collected it.
Was there anything else in that garbage cart?
No, just a few items stuck to the bottom, but nothing loose.
Was this one of those items that was stuck to the bottom?
The sweatshirt was not stuck to the bottom. It was just laying at the bottom by itself.
Nothing on top of it?
Correct.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you these gloves. Showing you it's marked Exhibit 480. I'm just going to ask you to take a look at it and tell me if you know what it is.
This says, it's under Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office number 24-062269. Description, gray zip-up hooded sweatshirt recovered in garbage can behind 3169 South 39th Street.
Can you open that up?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and once you get it open, just take a look inside and tell me if you know what's inside the bag.
There is another bag, a brown paper bag with my handwriting on it, and I can see the gray hooded sweatshirt in that bag.
Okay, I'd move 480 in.
Any objection?
No.
480 is received.
Can you pull it out of the bag and show the jury, please?
Yes, sir. Then inside is just another bag that's pulled up. So that's my handwriting, and this is the
All right. Now the front of it, are there pockets on the front chest area?
Yeah, there's an upper left chest, upper right chest, and then there's a lower left for like just putting your hand in there, and a lower right for same side pocket here.
466 is on the screen here. Are you able to see the two chest pockets here?
Yes, sir.
Do they appear to be the exact same pockets as on that jacket?
Yes, sir.
And then one of his hands is in the lower pockets, right?
Yes.
And then it looks like there's an item in the, what would be his lower right pocket.
Yes.
And on the left sleeve of that, some kind of item.
Yeah, it's a black patch. It says deluxe, so there's a little design on there.
Is it kind of the shape of a shield?
Yes. Oh, it's a fox. It's deluxe with a little face of a fox.
I'm going to show you 478 and 479. I'll just hold these up for you.
Yes.
What are 478 and 479?
There are still photographs of the defendant on the bus.
Move 478, 479, and ask to publish.
Any objection?
No.
478 and 479 are received. Go right ahead.
479 first. Are you able to see that same emblem on the left shoulder?
Yes, same shape, same size.
And 478, can you see it again?
Yes, it's more turned toward his bicep, but I can still see it.
All right, you can put that in the bags. I'm going to show you exhibits 389 through 402. Take a look at those and tell me if you know what they are.
Yes, I'm aware.
Are those all photographs from the date of the recovery of this sweatshirt?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to move each of those exhibits in and ask to publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Can I have the numbers one more time, please?
389 through 402.
Thank you. They're received. Go right ahead.
Starting with 389, Detective. What is that?
That's a photograph of the front of 3169 South 39th Street, which was the residence where the garbage carts were for.
And I'm going to put up 391 here. What's that?
This is a view of 3169 to the left, and then it's pointing to the north, so that would show two houses down as 3161 South 39th Street.
I don't think there's a 390, just for the record. So the numbers were correct on the exhibit numbers, except 390. There is none in this stack.
So 389 to 402, excluding 390.
Yes, I believe so. And if that's wrong, I will correct us. All right. So you found the sweatshirt behind this house?
Yes, sir.
And one house, two houses over, that would be 3161?
Objection leading.
Okay.
It was leading. I'll sustain the objection. Ask your next question.
What house is this?
3161 South 39th.
392 is on the screen now. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the back of 3161 South 39th.
The defendant's residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And to orient us, 393. Now where are we looking?
We're looking to the south in the direction of where the carts were that I located the sweatshirt.
Right up here that my pen is pointing to, what is that?
That's going to be 3169 South 39th Street.
What's the object I'm pointing to?
A basketball hoop.
394.
That's just a close-up of getting closer to 3169 South 39th Street.
All right, I'm going to skip 395 because it's a repeat. 396 is on the screen right now. What are we looking at?
That's a photograph of the garbage cart and the recycling cart behind 3169.
Is that, which one of those is the one you looked in?
The left one. The
Green?
The green.
Okay. 397.
This is a photograph with the lid open, showing the sweatshirt at the bottom.
398.
And that's a close-up with the camera halfway down there, down the cart, showing the sweatshirt.
No other bags of garbage were in there?
There was none.
Anything else in that garbage cart besides the stuff stuck to the bottom?
No, that was it.
Was it light? The garbage cart, when you grabbed it yourself, did it feel like anything was in there?
No, it did not.
399.
This was me recovering the sweatshirt, and Detective Schimmel's taking a photograph of showing it, the whole front of it.
Now, if you, and obviously you'd pulled it out of the cart by now, but if you had just done a cursory lift of that garbage cart, would you have even seen that jacket?
Objection calls for speculation.
No, I'll allow that. He can answer that if he's able to.
If you're going to lift it without looking, no, you wouldn't know. It'd just feel the weight of the actual cart itself.
Did you look inside the pockets of that hoodie or jacket or whatever you want to call it?
When I recovered it, I could feel objects in the pockets. I did not take them out until we got down to our building with the sweatshirt. But as I was putting the sweatshirt into this brown bag, a book of pocket matches came out of the upper left chest pocket.
400. What are we looking at?
We are now downtown in our evidence room. We have the sweatshirt laid out, taking an overall photograph of it, somewhat zipped up. And them are the matches that came out of the upper left pocket.
401, what's that?
This is a Bic lighter. There was a little smudge toward the bottom of it. This was recovered in the lower right pocket of the sweatshirt.
And 402, finally, what is that?
This is all the items out of the pocket. The blue and black Swiss Army knife, very small blade. That was in the lower left pocket of the sweatshirt. And then the other two matchbooks and that small keychain lighter, which the light did work, those were all found in the upper left pocket with that box of matches that fell out.
Okay, so just help me understand, is one of these box of matches in this photograph one of the ones that originally fell out?
Yeah, it's going to be the bottom one.
So this is the one I'm pointing to, that's the one that fell out when you were originally starting to go through it?
Yes.
And then in addition to that, you found how many more boxes of matches?
The 2 on top, so 3 total.
And then what is this gray item here?
It's a keychain, just a flat light. I might have said lighter, but it's a light.
Okay.
And just one of those little push button lights, put it on and it gives you a little bit of light, and it worked.
It's not a flame.
Correct, not a flame.
This item here, what is this?
That's a Swiss Army knife. It's got the tools like a corkscrew and a little bit of a file on it and a little blade.
Were there matches within these matchbooks?
Yes.
And the last item is, I have 401, that's the lighter?
Yes, that was by itself in the lower right pocket.
Were there any other items found in the pockets of that jacket or hoodie?
No.
What was the condition of the hoodie?
It was wet throughout, dirty. Just there's some dirt on it, some stains on it, but it was wet.
Do you recall the weather around that time, early April, what it was like?
It did rain earlier in the week.
Okay. Showing you exhibits 481 through 486. What are those items?
These are the items that we just went over on the photograph that I collected out of the pockets. This is my handwriting. It's a Swiss knife, a lighter, the small little keychain light, and then the 3 boxes of matches.
Move 481 through 486 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
They're received.
And did you make contact with the resident of, was it 3169?
Yes, that's correct. I did.
Do you know her name?
I think it was LaShonda Harvey.
Prior to going out there to do that search of that alley, had you learned from other investigators whether or not the hooded jacket had been recovered?
I learned on that night of the 11th, it was brought up about the jacket or backpack, or the sweatshirt or backpack, and then I learned that neither was recovered during the search warrant or during any type of searches.
And in your searches of the alley, we'll strike that. That's what made you go back out there, right?
Yes.
And in those searches, did you ever recover the camouflage backpack?
No, sir.
Nothing else?
Cross?
Thank you. You played a number of roles in this case beyond just looking in trash cans, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Including going to 27th and Lisbon to look for witnesses. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I did.
And actually, you did that on April 8th, didn't you?
Yes.
You and Mr. Schimmels, you just talked earlier about Thaddeus Schimmels. You and Detective Schimmels drove up and down Lisbon Avenue.
That's correct.
Because you're familiar with the timeline in this case, I'm sure, right?
Yes, sir.
That we have April 2nd, that there's a vehicle that is on fire and the days of what happened afterwards, right?
Yes, I learned all that on the 8th, correct.
Including that Mr. Anderson was arrested on April 4th, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that for sure, arrested on April 4th.
Yes, sir.
And obviously the arson happening a couple of days before that.
That's correct.
But the reason why on April 8th you went down Lisbon Avenue is because you did that briefing on that day, and it was decided that you would go out looking for these women who are seen on video pointing in the direction of the car, right?
Yes, I saw that video, and the couple females on that video we were trying to locate and identify.
And the reason why you wanted to do that was because you could see those, at least one of the women having some sort of a reaction. And as of April 8th, no law enforcement had spoken with her by that point.
That's correct.
So for days, almost a week, 6 days after the car has gone up in flames. Neither of those women has ever spoken with law enforcement as far as you knew.
That's true.
And since it had been 6 days or so and this woman hadn't made any statements, you thought maybe if we drive down Lisbon Avenue, we might find her.
That's correct.
And that's what you did.
Yes.
And you showed a photo array.
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
I didn't ask anything about what
No, I'm going to overrule that objection as to that question. You can answer that question.
Yes, I showed a photo array.
And a photo array is what?
It's a procedure that we use to show witnesses or victims of potential suspects. It's the target is going to be the suspect and then 5 fillers. So the person goes folder by folder to try to identify the suspect.
And the person who you administered that photo array to is a woman named Laura Dyer, correct?
Yes, sir.
You concluded that Laura Dyer was one of the 2 women who had been near the scene of that car going up in flames.
I'm going to object. The answer to that question requires hearsay.
Any response?
I'm not going to ask about anything she said specifically, but it's to show why he showed it's to show the effect on him, why he showed a photo array to these individuals.
So if you're not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted, you're offering it for the effect on the listener, the information that that was garnered. I will allow you to answer that question.
Can you repeat it?
One of the women, who was the woman that you showed the photo array to?
Laura Dyer.
Very good. Now, that happened on April 8th, right?
Yes, sir.
Did the photo array?
Yes.
And you talked to her?
Yes.
And just to be clear, as far as you know, that's the only time she spoke with law enforcement?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Now, moving forward, and then on that day, there were other things you did too, looking for more videos and things like that nearby.
That's correct.
You would agree that the amount of videos that you've reviewed is rather extensive, right?
Yes.
I won't go through all of them with you here on the stand, but in general, you're also aware of the fact that there is video surveillance. When we were looking at remember we had the map up of the alley and the trash can area? You remember that?
Yes, sir.
You're even aware that there was video surveillance of the home across the street from Mr. Anderson's house, right?
Yes.
Okay, that there's a video camera that may not be the best quality, but allows one to look into essentially down the pathway leading to the alley, right?
Yes, sir.
And you canvassed that whole area, including the alley area, for videos as well, right?
Yes, I know there's initial video canvas done by other shifts, and then we piggybacked off of them to try to get addresses that they had no answers.
Okay. Who do you see on video putting that sweatshirt into the trash can?
Any video I've seen, I did not see anybody. You cannot see a person put anything in that trash can. The trash can's off camera view.
So to be clear, there is no video of Max Anderson putting that sweatshirt in a trash can.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a video of Max Anderson, for example, wearing that sweatshirt, walking just off camera by a trash can, and then coming back on camera with no sweatshirt on?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, we know he had it on the bus because we saw the photo and the video, right?
Yes, sir.
And then beyond that, what can you say about the sweatshirt? You found it April 12th.
Yes, sir.
11 days, 10 days later.
That's correct.
During which time there had been at least 2 trash pickups, according to your testimony. Right? April 8th, you said there had been a trash pickup.
There would have just been on that, he returned on the 2nd later, so yeah, it would have been just on the 8th.
There would have been one on April 8th, and you didn't recover that until 4 days after the trash DPW. When you said DPW before, you meant the trash department.
Yeah, Department of Public Works, they oversee the garbage collection.
Okay, and April 8th, they would have gone through the alley and picked up the trash.
Yes, they did.
Okay. And we know by April 8th, Mr. Anderson's been arrested, right?
That's correct.
And then somehow 4 days later, this sweatshirt is found.
That's correct.
And it's your testimony that you actually went there on April 9th, right?
After the afternoon of April 9th, we were over there checking for video, and we did that also.
One of the things you did was go up and down the lot and physically jiggle the look in the cans and or jiggle them, right?
Yes.
With respect to the specific can 3169, can you say that on April 9th you looked in that trash can, or is that just one of the ones you jiggled?
I looked in it and I saw an object down there, and I just remember that in my memory.
So if trash came on April 8th, then the next day is when you would have believed you saw that same sweatshirt.
I did see it, yes.
You believe it's the same one as you testify?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what would be important is obviously take that sweatshirt, test it for what a DNA and other such things, right?
Yes, I packaged it, and that was the plan.
And to see if there's any hair follicles in it, for example.
Yes.
Or blood would be important to look for as well.
Very true.
And you did all of that, you packaged it and had it processed for all of that testing, right?
No, I packaged it all, and then some of the items I took to our forensics unit to be swabbed for DNA. All the items like the Swiss Army knife, the matches, the lighter, the keychain light. And then I physically met Detective Kayla and gave her the property.
Right. And when you keep saying lighter, what you mean is actually the flashlight thing.
Well, there was the Bic lighter, and then there was the little keychain flashlight.
Okay. You're aware, you've seen video of Mr. Anderson smoking, right? Or no?
No.
Okay, you're not aware if he's a smoker or not a smoker?
I have no idea.
You would agree that smokers often carry Bic lighters with them?
Yes.
Or matches?
Correct.
Right. Now, you did say that you spoke with the homeowner about her trash behind her house. You did interview that person, right?
Yes, sir.
And your partner is Detective, who requested fingerprints from the matchbook and the lighter and the knife? That was you, wasn't it?
Yes, I took those items to forensics for processing of DNA or fingerprints, depending on the material.
What were the results?
Fingerprints, nothing. DNA that was swabbed, and I gave those DNA swabs to the sheriff's department.
What do you mean nothing for fingerprints? Meaning there were none?
Correct.
Not that they were and they didn't match?
That's correct.
And obviously, you're going to agree with me that things can be missed, right?
Yes, sir.
An example being, you look in a trash can, you see something, it doesn't register that it was important at that time, and it gets missed, right?
Yes, sir.
Same thing can be true just for any officer can miss something, right?
Yes, it can happen.
And in this case, all the testing that's done is crime lab stuff for DNA and things like that, right?
Yes.
What about testing a sweatshirt, for example, for flammable liquid? Would that be something important to do?
Yes, that would all be, the whole sweatshirt would be sent to the crime lab for processing of what they deem necessary.
Okay. Now, since you're familiar a little bit with the timeline in this case, you are aware that there were multiple searches on Mr. Anderson's home, right?
I was aware a search warrant was executed there. I don't know the details, and I don't know how many times.
Okay, so you're not familiar with how many times law enforcement went into the home?
That's correct. I have no idea.
Do you have any idea? Well, let me ask this question. April 9th, okay? Let me take you back to April 9th. You've had the briefing on April 8th. You're going through the alley. You're looking in bins, right?
Yes.
On that day, and obviously on that day, you know which home is Mr. Anderson's home, right? It's been communicated and you've been there.
Yes.
On that, first of all, this sweatshirt was not found in Mr. Anderson's trash can, right?
That's correct.
Nor is it in a burn pit in his backyard or anything like that, right?
It was not.
When you went down the alley on April 9th,
That's correct.
Mr. Anderson's home was not surrounded by law enforcement at that time.
It was not.
It wasn't being actively processed as a search scene, right?
That's correct.
In fact, the only law enforcement there were you and Thaddeus Schimmels.
Yes.
And that was what time of day that you were going through the alley on April 9th?
It was the afternoon.
Okay. So then the morning, you didn't as a detective instruct a deputy to keep eyes on this alley at all times, did you?
No, I did not.
Well, when you try to piece things together with video surveillance, because there is some video surveillance in that alley, isn't there?
Yes.
So when you try to piece things together with video surveillance, are you able to piece together a time frame in which Mr. Anderson supposedly put, can you even say that Mr. Anderson put that in the trash can?
No, I cannot.
Okay, that's all.
State?
Did you attempt to figure out the timeline of when that would have gotten into that trash can?
We tried.
Did you do that by talking to the woman who lives there?
Yes.
What'd you learn?
I found out that she was in and out on vacation and used very little trash, which is why it was no garbage in there, and there was no article of clothing that she put in that garbage cart.
And did you follow up with DPW to try to figure out if they had in fact picked up that specific can?
Yes.
What'd you learn?
We learned that
I'm going to object on hearsay grounds to what DPW said.
I think he opened the door for this.
It's still hearsay.
Any other response?
No, he opened the door to it.
I still need a hearsay exception or reasoning underlying.
I'll ask a different question.
Go ahead.
You talked to the DPW workers about whether or not they picked up the can that day, correct?
Yes.
And you'd agree there is no video camera that captures that can?
There is not.
And so are you even aware of whether that can was actually put into a DPW truck?
I don't know.
Do you know whether their typical practice is to empty every can?
Again, that calls for hearsay.
No, I think that could be based on his own experience and knowledge, and I think if it's his opinion as to it, he can answer that.
They are supposed to dump every garbage cart.
Do they always do that?
No.
Nothing else.
Pence?
Yes, I'm the homeowner. She didn't say she put out no trash, right?
She said she had very little trash during this time frame because she was on vacation a few times.
Right, during portions of time she was on vacation, but she still had some trash, just less than normal.
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
State?
Nothing more.
Thank you, Detective Lopez.
You're welcome.
Okay.
State your next witness.
Janelle Vitt-Latchel.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You can please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
Janelle, Janel, Vitt-Latchel, Vytlacil.
How are you employed?
I'm a forensic investigator with the City of Milwaukee, Milwaukee Police Department.
What does a forensic investigator do?
Forensic investigator works within the forensics unit. The forensics unit is a unit that assists patrol and the Criminal Investigation Bureau with processing, documenting, and collecting forensic evidence from scenes and evidence for crimes.
How long have you worked as a forensic investigator?
Going on 8 years, but I've been with the department going on 20.
As a role of a forensic investigator, do you swab items for DNA?
Yes.
Can you just briefly discuss or tell the jury what that process entails?
So if I'm giving a piece of evidence or there's a surface area that needs to be swabbed for DNA, first I will photograph the area or the object of whatever I'm going to be swabbing. So the swabbing process, first I'll put gloves on and then we'll have 2 cotton swabs. One of them is moistened with distilled water and one of them is dry. So we'll take that moistened one and we'll swab the surface with that one and then we'll follow it up with the dry swab. So these 2 swabs are then put into a glycine envelope, which is a wax paper type envelope, and then sealed into another envelope that has the case information on it.
Did you receive a series of items to swab that were recovered from a hoodie, namely matches and a lighter?
Yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, you work in-house, right?
Yes, I work within our forensics lab.
There are some forensic investigators who like go out to the scene and process items at the scene, right?
Correct.
You're the type of forensic investigator who the evidence is brought back to you and you're swabbing those things, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show you exhibits 470 through 477. What are those?
These are my DNA swabs.
And what did you take those DNA swabs from?
So there's 8 total DNA swabs. They were collected from a Swiss Army knife, a Bic lighter. There was a small pocket keychain light, and then 3 boxes of matches.
401 is on the screen now. That's the Bic lighter.
Yes.
And 402. The matches and what other objects?
So this is not my photo because I did not have the sweatshirt, but yes, those are the 3 boxes of matches along with the knife.
I would move 470 through 477 in.
Any objection?
No.
They're received.
And then the purpose of you doing that is because eventually those swabs would then be sent down to the state crime lab, right?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. You're not the one doing any DNA testing on those. That's done by somebody else.
I do not analyze the swabs, no.
I have no other questions.
Cross.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, how are you all doing right now? Anybody need a break? Oh, we need a break at this point. Okay, we'll take a quick afternoon break and then we'll come back and continue.
Thank you, Delaney. I was muted. We have just seen that the Maxwell Anderson trial has gone to break. Oddly enough, they turned the camera off this time. Typically, they will have that shot of the clock or the flagpole, but I'm going to leave it there just so we can kind of keep an eye on things for now. We know that okay, there, we've got something at least on the wall. So they've taken a break, a recess, actually a little longer, I think, than typically for the afternoon for them to go. It's now 3:09 p.m., and I am not wearing the microphone. Hey, you guys probably can't hear me so well. You can hear me a little bit, but now you're going to hear me better. It's not like I've been doing this for 6 days, right? So anyway, they've broken for a little while, probably 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a break.
I just heard the judge's voice. I don't know if she's going to come back on the bench and talk to the parties at all before they go, or if they're officially out. We'll consider them officially out of the courtroom. So they're breaking for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then it will come back. We have now had, I'm counting, it looks like 11 witnesses so far today, 5 yet this afternoon. We finished up Kayla Bierke, Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective, who had done the search of Maxwell Anderson's home. In fact, it was searched a total officially of 4 times, although the first time they were in there was on April 4th, which would have been 2 days after the disappearance or the discovery of Sade Robinson's leg. So from the 4th into the 5th, they were executing 2 simultaneous search warrants. So technically, they're considered 2 separate searches. She said they were back there on the 6th for a 3rd search warrant to be executed, and then they came back on April 16th. So 4 official searches in all on 3 separate days at Maxwell Anderson's home. We did hear more about some of what they found inside, some of the blood stains, but those blood stains didn't come back to Sade Robinson, and it really wasn't clear honestly what the relevance of that was, but there was some discussion of some blood stains being found. What I thought was particularly interesting is they called Joanne Donner back to the stand. She has been on the stand several times throughout this trial. She was called Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office detective because talking about that search of the home, we've talked about the couch. And I'm going to pull that picture up for you right now. Okay, thank you, Delaney. That red couch that is going to be significant here. It was actually mentioned in testimony for the first time, not just opening statements, but in testimony, that there is a photograph of Sade Robinson on a red couch, and prosecutors say it is on that red couch in Maxwell Anderson's living room. They called Detective Donner to the stand to ask her, did you do, there were some stains on the couch. They ran some DNA tests, or some tests, not DNA, sorry. They ran some tests on that to determine if it was Sade Robinson's blood. It came back that it was not. And then the defense asked on cross, well, did you do any additional tests? Or I believe, maybe it was the state still asking this, but did you do any additional tests on the couch for Sade Robinson's DNA to prove she had been there? And Detective Donner said no. The state said, well, why not? And she said, because we had a picture showing she's there. We don't need to test that. To kind of drive the point home, the lead prosecutor, Ian Vance Curzan, said, you can see me sitting in this chair. You don't have to test it for my DNA, right? Because you can see me here. So the point he was trying to make is maybe they don't have DNA of Sade Robinson on that couch, something they expect the defense to raise. They do have a photograph, they say, showing her on what they say is that red couch. But we haven't seen that photograph yet. I imagine we are going to see it some point soon. I don't know if that will be today, if that will be tomorrow, but we've been hearing more testimony that has been leading up to that part. What else did we hear this afternoon? We heard from Vincent Lopez in the Milwaukee Police Department Homicide Unit about a hoodie that was found. We've heard they never have found that tan backpack that was seen in the photographs and the video of Maxwell Anderson leaving the scene of the car fire and then heading to the scene of, or heading to the bus stop and then riding the bus home. A lot of photographs of Anderson in that progression from the fire scene to the bus stop and on the bus and home. He's got this backpack on. They never found the backpack, but he's wearing a hoodie as well, a very distinctive hoodie. You can see it right there. You can see the zippers. You can kind of see what the coloration of that looks like. And prosecutors had Detective Lopez from the homicide unit on the stand to say he went and helped with a search in the days after this. This was actually now, I think, a week after Sade Robinson's leg had been found. They were searching the garbage cans in the alley outside Maxwell Anderson's home. Why it took a week to do that is not explained, but a week later, it's April 9th. Remember, her leg was found on April 2nd. They're searching the garbage cans. This particular set of garbage cans, the green one on the left, is where Detective Lopez says he found that hoodie, or a hoodie that matches that description of the one. And you see at the bottom of the garbage can, you see it sitting there essentially all by itself. There's nothing else in the garbage except some old remnants of garbage that are stuck to the bottom of the can. If you've ever had one of these big cans, you know sometimes stuff just gets stuck down there and it'll never come out when the garbage person comes to dump it out. But so Detective Lopez is saying that's all that was in there. And what he actually said is, at one point, when they first did their canvass of this neighborhood, he searched, he looked in there, he remembered seeing this article of clothing at the bottom all by itself, but for some reason found it unremarkable and just kept going. Didn't pick it up, didn't take a picture of it, didn't do anything with it. It wasn't until his next shift when he saw photographs of Anderson posted on the roll call wall, photographs that we just showed you of him wearing that hoodie, and it I guess dawned on him, hey, I think that's what I saw in that garbage can. And that's his story anyway. That's what he's telling, is he thought, I think I saw that in the bottom of a garbage can. So he goes back to the neighborhood and he searches again. And this time he finds the can. Turns out the hoodie is still there. But here's what was the defense raised as kind of a strange point, and I think maybe one that is an interesting point here, is on April 8th, the DPW sanitation department came through and did their regular garbage collection in Maxwell Anderson's neighborhood. So most of the garbage cans they found when they did their first run through, they were empty. There's nothing in them because the garbage had just been collected, and Detective Lopez is thinking we were too late. We missed it. We could have gotten evidence, but here we are almost a week later, and I guess we missed what was ever in that garbage because garbage has already been taken. But then he sees the roll call, and then he remembers the one article of clothing that was still there. So the question is, if the garbage collectors came on April 8th, what's the hoodie doing all by its lonesome in a garbage can, which, by the way, is not outside Maxwell Anderson's house. It's 2 doors down at a neighbor's home. detectives spoke of having, or the prosecutor spoke of having that neighbor tell them that she had been on vacation quite a bit, didn't have much garbage. And you heard Detective Lopez say when he tried to lift up the garbage can, if you just tried to lift it up, it would have been so light, it would have felt like nothing was in there, that the sweater didn't have any weight to it, or the hoodie didn't have any weight to it. So he seems to be suggesting that maybe what happened is garbage collectors came through, they shook the can, they didn't feel anything, they moved on to the next one, and it just happened to still be there a day later. That's their story. The defense is saying that doesn't make any sense. They would empty out every garbage can. Why wouldn't they look at it? How does this get there? And here's why it's really important. You think, well, why couldn't Maxwell Anderson have gone out and thrown it out on the 9th? Well, the reason is because Maxwell Anderson was in custody as of April 4th. So the defense is saying, if somebody dumped that in the garbage on April 8th or 9th, it wasn't Maxwell Anderson. He was in jail. The prosecutors are saying, essentially, we think it was there all along, and the garbage collectors just didn't empty out that can when they came through the neighborhood on April 8th. I think I might have said August a couple of times. April 8th. Whatever it is, they have the hoodie. We just heard a forensic investigator, Janelle Vidlachel, say that she did some swabbing of that, and she is not the one who gets the results. I suspect we are next going to hear from someone at the Wisconsin Crime Lab who's going to tell us what they found on that hoodie, and if in fact it confirms the connection to Maxwell Anderson, and if there is a connection to Sade Robinson. These are all the things we are waiting to hear, but obviously that hoodie was a big piece of evidence that has come out this afternoon. There's much more we've heard of today. I'm going to take a break. We are in a recess right now, a brief break at the Milwaukee County Safety Building, which is, as we are awaiting the resumption of testimony in the trial of Maxwell Anderson, and this is in the death of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. We'll come back and talk about more, take you back to court when they are ready, right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And I'm Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's 3:21 on Tuesday, June 3rd. It is day 6 of the Maxwell Anderson trial. He is charged in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The court is currently in a brief afternoon recess, and as they left, they had just finished up, the state just finished up with the 61st witness in this case, and that was Milwaukee Police Department forensic investigator Janelle Vidlachel. She was testifying about the process of swabbing the hoodie that prosecutors say belongs to Maxwell Anderson. They say that is the hoodie that he was wearing when they saw him walk away from the fire scene, the car fire scene at 29th and Lisbon, and then walk all the way to the bus stop at 35th and Lisbon and ride the bus home. The detective who was holding that up there is Detective Vincent Lopez from the Milwaukee Police Department Homicide Unit. He says that he found that hoodie in the bottom of a garbage can a couple of doors down from Maxwell Anderson's house. This is what it looked like. He says it was in there all by itself. The other garbage in there was just old stuff stuck to the bottom. And the theory that he is essentially presenting is that even though the garbage collectors had already come that week, that they had not emptied out that particular can because it was so light that it probably felt like there was nothing in it. That's at least what the prosecution is saying. Of course, the defense is raising the question as to whether or not there was, or how it could have gotten there, because they're saying that if the garbage came on April 8th and he found it in there on April 9th, well, Maxwell Anderson had been in custody since April 4th, so who put it in there and where did it come from? That's sort of what the defense is raising. Again, the prosecution is saying it sounds like garbage collectors just missed it, and the police didn't find it until April 9th, which was, by the way, a full week after Sade Robinson's leg was first found. We are now probably within a couple of minutes of court resuming. As I said, we've had 61 witnesses so far in this case. What we still expect to hear, and I don't know if it'll be this afternoon, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, I don't know exactly when it's coming, but it's coming. We're going to hear about those photographs that were found on Maxwell Anderson's phone. Photographs that include Sade Robinson on what prosecutors say was his living room couch. Did I just get something in my ear there that I didn't hear? Okay. All right. Maxwell Anderson is back in the courtroom. The jury is not there yet. You can see here with our double box setup that there's a shot of a photograph on the wall in the courtroom. When they are back on the record, we'll see the judge back on the bench, Judge Laura Crivello, and then we'll take you back there for a resumption of testimony. I suspect we're going to hear someone from the state crime lab next, most likely, who is going to tell us what those swabs of the hoodie found. That is likely to be next. We're still waiting to see that surveillance video from across the street of Maxwell Anderson's house that we are told shows movement in his upstairs unit, two individuals that you can see through that bay window at the top of the front of the house, and that there was movement inside, proving that in fact there were two people there. Prosecutors say those two people were Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson. So still more to come. I don't know that we're going to hear all of that today, so I suspect the state is still going to be presenting its case in chief as of tomorrow, if not beyond. But we're getting drips and drops of additional key pieces of evidence. Something else we heard today saw today was actually photographs of knives all over Maxwell Anderson's house. They said he had 51 knives in all, some in the kitchen, some in the bedroom, some in the living room. The question is, was the guy a collector of knives? Why did he have so many knives? And that question comes up in the midst of a medical examiner saying that she believes a knife may have been used to do some of the amputation, although she never came to a conclusion as to what method was used for the death or the dismemberment of Sade Robinson. Are we hearing any more about what's happening there in the courtroom? Okay, jury is coming back in the courtroom now, I am told, and we are just waiting for that to happen. We'll get you back there at 3:25, so there's probably about another hour and a half of testimony, and we'll catch back up with you when they're done.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you could please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L, Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Are you a detective with the City of Milwaukee Police Department?
I am, yes.
What unit are you assigned to?
I'm assigned to the Homicide Division.
Through your employment as a detective assigned to the Homicide Division, did you assist in the investigation into the disappearance of Sade Robinson?
I did, yes.
Was one role of your investigation to look for surveillance video in the neighborhood surrounding Maxwell Anderson's home?
Yes, that was one of my assignments, yes.
Were you aware that his home was 3161 South 39th Street?
Yes.
That neighborhood in general is predominantly just residences, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the street to the north of the residence would be?
To the north is going to be Oklahoma.
And to the south?
It's going to be Euclid Avenue.
Is that location on the map here?
It is, yes.
All right. I've got my cursor. Here's 40th Street. You see where my cursor is?
Yes.
All right. And if I zoom in a little, we're talking about this block here, correct?
That is correct, yes.
This T is the alley that is in that 3100 block of South 39th Street?
That is correct, yes.
Did you also review bus video from a Milwaukee County Transit bus that travels on South 35th Street?
I did, yes.
What was the relevance of that video to you?
I was made aware that the defendant had traveled on that bus from 35th and Lisbon south all the way up to the area of 35th Street and Lakefield.
Can you, using the microphone that is next to you, which I believe you're going to have to turn on, can you get up and tell us from your review of that Milwaukee County Transit video where the defendant exited the bus?
Sure. So the bus traveled southbound on 35th Street here. He exited the bus right about here, just south of Lakefield, which is this street here. And then he traveled west on Lakefield, and then it would be south on 38th Street, and then continued west on Euclid until arriving in this area of his residence.
All right. So Lakefield here is this angled street on the right side of the screen, but this going across 35th Street would be the most logical route to take from where he got off the bus to get to his residence.
That is correct. That is what we believe.
So what area, did you search the area of the alley behind the defendant's home for video that might show him arriving back?
Yes, we did.
And could you point out on this map approximately where you found video?
Sure. So the residence is going to be 3174. It's right here, and it is a camera in the rear alley facing towards the address of 3161 South 39th.
Does it angle towards either of the north or south streets?
Yes, it angles. The camera is on 3174, and it points in a southeast direction towards. It's going to capture like the alley, and it captures Euclid, and then it just captures South 39th Street in the background.
The corner?
Correct.
Okay. The T part not depicted, right?
Correct.
Did you also become aware when you were reviewing the footage from that camera of an approximate time that Sade Robinson's car arrived in that location?
Yes.
This would have been obviously hours before the bus.
That is correct, yes.
All right. Where was that? What did you see?
So on that camera, from the front, we observe 39th Street is here. We observe the vehicle arrive at approximately 9:20 in the evening, traveling northbound on 39th Street.
And then how about that alley video? Do you see the car on that video at any point in time?
Yes, we see that car leaving the residence at approximately 12:47 p.m. on the 2nd.
PM?
I'm sorry, a.m. on the 2nd.
All right.
I apologize.
I've got Exhibit 206 in my computer here.
Is it a disc?
It is a disc.
Thank you.
Marked as Exhibit 206.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring up the first clip, these are titled for purposes of court presentation. I'm going to call this, well, let's actually go off the timestamp. So what are we looking at here, Detective? Can you just explain everything for us?
Sure. So this is kind of how I described. So the camera is on the residence here, and it is pointing in a southeast direction. This is going to be the alley here. This is Euclid Avenue here. And then this is South 39th Street in the background. So what we are observing is just the vehicle is going to be traveling in the alley here.
And tell us about the date and the time, because I don't think it's readily visible on the screen here.
Yes, so this is a cloud-based camera system, and it does not depict a date and time on there. However, if you look at the file name, the date and the timestamp is the starting time of the video is depicted in that.
What time does this video start?
So it starts at 12:47 and 21 seconds.
AM?
AM, yes.
On what date?
On the 2nd, And it's the clip is approximately 31 seconds long.
And that's that's consistent with how all the files that you originally obtained were titled?
That is correct, yes.
All right, I'm going to move Exhibit 206 into evidence.
Bless you. Any objection?
No.
206 is received.
I'm going to play this 31-second clip, and you said it starts at 12:47 and 21 seconds?
That is correct, yes.
What do we see?
We're seeing a vehicle traveling from the north, south, in the alley, and then at the end of the alley, the vehicle is going to turn and travel west onto Euclid.
All right, and I'm going to back it up to the beginning. Are there any distinctive features on the vehicle which lead you to believe this is Sade's vehicle?
Yes, we were made, or I was shown pictures of the vehicle, and the most distinct thing in this photo is you do observe the distinct taillights.
C-shaped?
Correct.
I'm going to zoom in slightly. Can you point out what you're talking about?
Yes. So right here you can see it, and I believe when the vehicle gets closer to the end of the alley, you can see it a little bit better.
All right, I'm going to go frame by frame.
Like right there, before the brake lights illuminate.
All right. And then the vehicle turns which way on Euclid?
It turns westbound on Euclid, and you can't see it actually, but you can see the lights through the fence line there.
The next thoroughfare, I'm pulling it back up 443 here. If you exited that alley to the south here, and you made that westbound turn on Euclid, what would be the next main thoroughfare that you would reach?
South 43rd Street.
All right, and South 43rd Street, if you go far enough north, that becomes Miller Parkway?
It does, yes.
Did you watch this same camera or obtain footage of the subject from the bus arriving back?
I did, yes.
Going to pull up another clip on Exhibit 206. And can you tell us what date and time we're looking at for this clip?
Sure. On this one, it's going to be April 2nd, 2024, and this clip starts at 8:42 and 8 seconds a.m.
On what date? Sorry.
On April 2nd.
Okay. I have it paused at 25 seconds. Are you able to see the clothing that the subject is wearing?
Yes.
All right, what kind of clothing?
The clothing is consistent with the subject that we saw exit the bus. It's a dark colored hooded sweatshirt or jacket, dark pants, dark shoes with a white sole, and then a tan backpack.
Hood up?
Correct.
I'm going to disengage the zoom and play it again from the beginning. While that's playing, are you aware of what time that subject gets off the county transit bus? Let me restart the clip.
I think it froze there.
Are you aware of what time that subject exits the county transit bus?
Yes, at approximately 8:35 a.m.
Are you aware of how long it would take to exit the bus and walk to the point where that person is picked up on camera?
I believe we did a Google Maps type thing where it's approximately 0.3 miles and walking distance estimated approximately 7 minutes.
So the clip of that person walking in the alley, that was about 8 hours after the car had left the alley and turned onto Euclid.
That is correct, yes.
I'm going to now bring up Exhibit 205. Did you go to the address of 3166 South 39th Street to obtain video, any video of relevance?
I did, yes.
Did you, what is 3166 South 39th Street?
So it's a private residence that is across the street from the Target address. I observed that it had cameras on the exterior of the residence that could potentially have video.
And that would be, can you orient us again, just off of this map?
Yep, so this is South 39th Street here. So it's going to be approximately right here, and it is on the east side of the street with the camera. There were several cameras on the residence that pointed in a west direction.
Did you meet with that resident owner?
I did, yes.
What was her name?
Lydia Flores.
Did she allow you access to her video system?
She did, yes.
Was she well versed in how the system worked?
She was not.
Okay, so instead of accessing it for you, she just let you look at it yourself?
That is correct. She indicated that she wasn't very familiar.
Objection, hearsay.
It's not
Any
hearsay.
response?
It's not hearsay to ask if she was allowed to look at the video system herself.
True, but she was just about to say what Ms. Flores said.
I don't,
If
okay,
you're going
fine.
to answer it without saying what Ms. Flores said, answer it.
Can you just repeat the question?
Were you allowed to look at the video system yourself and recover video yourself?
I was, yes.
Did you check and see if the video system was in working order?
It was in working order, but I did observe that the timestamp was approximately 1 hour slow.
From real time?
That is correct.
And did you observe this to be a continuous recording stream?
So at the time of the downloading of it, the video system was set up as continuous recording. However, once we did download the files and get it back to to our police building, when I was reviewing the files, it is not a continuous recording. There are gaps within the video. Not really. It's set up to be continuous, but there were definitely gaps in the video.
What time frame did you obtain video from?
We obtained video from 9 p.m. on April 1st until 11 a.m. on April 2nd.
Why that time frame?
That was the time frame that we had been made aware of other events in the investigation. I believe it was phone records and other things like that, that we knew that was kind of the relevant time frame that we were looking at.
Were there multiple video cameras depicting areas that were really not of interest to your investigation?
There were, yes.
And describe that, please.
So there were several cameras, and I observed that only 2 of the cameras on the system would capture anything relevant. Several of the cameras were depicting the backyard, the driveway, in a direction that didn't face towards the target residence.
So what we're going to be talking about today, do you remember what cameras those are?
The ones that were working?
Yes.
Yes, Channel 4 and Channel 5.
Channel 4, I'm going to pull up a video clip here on Exhibit 205. It's a flash drive. And what are we looking at here? It says Channel 4 up in the corner.
Yep, so this is Channel 4, and this camera was placed in the south, that would be the southwest corner of the residence, and it was facing in a northwest direction.
And is the defendant's residence on this camera or not?
It is not.
Okay, where would it be approximately?
It would be approximately right where the Channel 4 is, kind of right here.
What are we going to see on this camera?
On this camera, we are going to see the victim's vehicle arrive.
What does it do? Stop in front or do what?
As it's traveling past, the brake lights do illuminate as it's slowing down, but then it does continue past the residence north.
And date and time?
So as I indicated, so this is April 1st, 4/1 of 2024. The timestamp on here says 8:20 and 11 seconds p.m., and that is 1 hour slow, so this is actually 9:20 and 11 seconds.
All the cameras were an hour slow, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so I'm going to start by playing this clip, but when we go to future clips and we're going through these, I'm going to ask you just to say what the real time would be, not based on what's written on the video. Does that sound good?
That's fair, yes.
All right, 9:20 p.m. camera 4. I'm going to play this clip. What do you see?
So you observe the victim's vehicle, and as I indicated, the taillights or the brake lights do illuminate. They come off, and then the vehicle continues traveling north on 39th Street.
And it travels in the direction of what?
Where that T alley that we pointed out on the map is.
I paused it at what would be real time, 9:20 and 57 seconds. I'm going to move on, detective, to camera 5. So based on that, you had seen the victim's vehicle arrive around 9:20, correct?
That is correct.
And then if we look back at Exhibit 206, which I'm not going to pull up here, but what time did the car leave?
The car leaves at 12:47 a.m.
And what time in the other camera, Exhibit 206, did the subject from the bus come walking into the back alley?
At 8:42 a.m.
All right. What are we looking at here?
So this is so the camera is mounted in the eastern corner, the northeastern corner of the residence, and it is pointing in a western direction. And we are this right here is going to be the defendant's residence.
You have watched many hours of video footage from this camera, correct?
I have, yes.
How many hours would you estimate you've spent combing through the video footage recovered from this residence?
Upwards of 100.
Okay. We're going to look at a lot of clips that are going to require us to look at minute details. Is that fair to say?
It is, yes.
Can you describe for the jury what we're going to be focusing on as we go through these clips and why it might be important for us to start with a daytime video?
Sure. So this is in the nighttime video, it's raining and it's dark and there's a lot of shadows and it is from a distance, so it is difficult to see. But in this daytime video, you can see that this is the defendant's residence, and you have, which is an upper-lower duplex. The defendant occupies, we knew that the defendant occupied the upper of this residence. This is the front bay window or picture window, if you will, where we do see movement in there. And then over here to the left of the screen, which is going to be the south side of the residence, you're seeing a fenced area, and then you see this overhang here. The entry door that is the only door that leads to the defendant's unit is here. There is a second back gate there that leads to that alley that we saw before.
Are we going to be spending some time looking at that back gate?
We are, yes.
Okay. I am going to play the clip I have queued up. What is the date and time in real time?
Sure, it's going to be April 2nd, 2024 at 8:42 and 56 seconds a.m.
And where would this pick up in relation to the clip we watched from the alley of the person from the bus walking up the alley?
So where they're walking up, that person is continuing north and in the direction of where this camera is.
What are we going to see?
We're going to see that same person that we see in the alley, and they're going to come through this gate here. You're going to see the gate open. You're going to see the subject consistent with that same person that we saw in the alley.
Playing this clip from 8:42:56 a.m. real time. Is that the gate opening?
It is.
What do you see?
And you see the person enter wearing the black or dark hooded sweatshirt, with the hood up, and then you can see the person is wearing that tan backpack.
All right, I'm going to back it up to the beginning, playing it again. Is he in the backyard still?
Yes.
I'm going to go to the next clip. Where does this one pick up?
So it picks up where the last one left off, and that person still is in the backyard, and then I believe they enter the residence here.
Judge, at this point, I'd like to ask if the court can ask the jury if they're all able to see this clearly, and if we need to dim the lights, because we're going to be going to the nighttime view of this as well.
Dim the lights. We can definitely dim the lights. Is everybody in a position to see? Does anybody on the end want to come up into the front seat, in the very front row, or are you all good? They all sound good. Okay.
All right. So this clip picks up at what time, real time?
8:43 and 38 seconds in the AM.
And do you see that subject anywhere?
Yes, so you see that you first saw the door swing open and then the subject entered the door.
And this one picks up at the end of the last clip, correct?
Yes.
So based on these videos, Detective, when can you conclude the person who got off the bus arrived back at Mr. Anderson's residence?
At 8:42 AM.
You've seen the bus video, right?
I have, yes.
Do you know who's on the bus?
Yes.
Who?
Maxwell Anderson.
Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 487 as that clip plays out. Is that just a still frame from that video?
It is, yes.
And if you could, just write on it the correct time at the top. I moved 487 in.
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
Thank you. I can take the pen. So the arrival back to the residence, 8:43:05 a.m. would be this timestamp.
That is correct.
And right in here, hard to see, that's the subject with the backpack.
That is correct.
I'm going to play this clip again. During the daytime portions of this video, are you able to actually see the door opening and closing?
In this, yes.
Okay. When we go to the nighttime, and I'm talking about this side door here.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. You see it there?
Yes.
When we look at this in the nighttime, are you going to be able to see that door opening and closing?
No.
Are there times where there's a light?
Yes.
Okay. But if there's no light, you're not able to see it opening and closing?
That is correct.
How about this back gate?
Yes, you'll be able to see that opening and closing.
I'm going to, so I've got if you see in the lower right here, there were 527 clips from Channel 5 that you reviewed, correct?
Correct.
And that was what time frame again?
That was from 9 p.m. on April 1st, 2024, until 11 a.m. on April 2nd, 2024.
All right, we're going to go back to the night before. April 1st, what time?
At 9:20:08.
And what do you know from the other camera happens here?
The victim's vehicle drives past the front.
Right there?
Yes.
Minutes later, what do you see near the gate?
You'll see a motion light illuminate in the back alley there, and then you will see the gate open.
All right, so now we're in the nighttime, so it's much harder to see. So why don't you point out for us where we want to be looking here?
So this is going to be that gate area, and then this is the front window area.
And there's a window up here where I'm circling that you can't see right now because it's off.
Correct, right now.
Does that eventually turn on?
Yes, it does.
And what time are we at here?
We're at 9:23 and 29 seconds.
Playing that clip. Tell me if you see any movement.
That's where we see the motion light activate.
This light right here?
Correct. And
And
then
what-
the gate just opened, and then you see human figures moving into the gate.
Okay, I'll back it up a few seconds. Tell me when the motion light goes on.
Right there, you see the light illuminate there. And then you see the gate swing open, and you see human movement into the gate.
What kind of movement?
Human, or you see silhouettes, I guess.
Okay. As I move this clip ahead, the gate has closed.
Yes,
Are you able to see whether those people go to the door, or can you just not see it?
you can't really see.
That clip is finished. Next clip, we're picking up at what time, Detective?
It's going to be 9:25 and 15 seconds p.m.
Shortly after the last clip.
Correct.
And where do we want to look now?
In this clip, you're going to see that the lights come on in the upper.
Tell us when.
Right there, you see a background light come on first, and then you see the main light come on in the front window.
Did you see movement across there?
Yes.
Backing it up 10 seconds, light on.
And then you'll see a human silhouette move through that background light.
Okay. Would that have been consistent or inconsistent with them arriving at his residence around this time?
It would be consistent with that.
Now, you watched these clips throughout the entire night, correct?
That is correct.
Focusing on not only the area over here where I'm circling near his backyard, but also the upper area near that front window.
That is correct, yes.
Next clip. Gonna play this one sped up. What time is it?
It's 9:27 p.m.
And a car drives by at what time?
At 9:28 and 40 seconds.
Next clip. What are you looking at as you're watching these clips?
I had to go through them twice and watch, the door one time and the upper window the next time through, because it's hard to watch both locations at the same time. In this particular clip, there is just human or silhouettes moving in the upper unit.
That you can see?
Correct.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
All right, where is it?
Right here.
Okay.
And then it just moved out, and then you do see it in that background light as well.
Does that movement consistently occur on that upper unit for a period of time?
It does, yes.
About what period of time?
between the time of the arrival and when the vehicle leaves.
Okay. Next clip we're picking up at basically 9:30.
Correct.
What are you seeing in the upper?
You're seeing human movement in the upper.
Next clip. Picking up where the last one left off, 9:30.
Yes.
Okay. What do you see?
You continue to see the movement, the silhouettes in the upper unit, in that front window.
All right, this clip ending at 9:32:15. Next clip. We're not going to watch all of these, but essentially, while they're in the upper, you were just looking at that upper window, right?
That is correct, yes.
Do you see more movement?
Yes, you continue to see movement. Appears to be human silhouettes interacting.
Can you tell what's going on or no?
No.
What is causing you to think
Fox 6
human
investigator
movement?
Brian Polson here in the at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We are going to break away here on this stream from the testimony. If you want to keep watching it uninterrupted, you can go to our Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube channel, as you always can, to watch coverage of this trial from start to finish. We are going to be breaking away momentarily and bringing you Fox 6 News at 4 p.m. And of course, if there are any breaks in the trial during that time, we will have more updates on the news on Fox 6 News at 4. But again, you can watch the stream uninterrupted on our YouTube channel. We hope you'll be back here again tomorrow. We'll be here live from noon to 4, bringing you the latest testimony, analysis, and updates on what's been happening in the trial of Maxwell Anderson and the death